And we should be live. How's it going, everyone? And welcome to an episode of No Excuses on YouTube.com with your favorite show host, R. Still.
And Volatile, and we're here to bring you today's news and games commentary for the week. And we don't have a Fern, and we don't have a Fern because the Qantas.
Something about airplanes.
The Qantas broke a plane again. Much like Air New Zealand, and I presume, for as long as I can remember that I've been, that I've had sort of like a certain flow of information on the topic. Americans have always complained about their airlines being miserable, but I know for a fact from personal experience and from Fern's complaints that the national airlines of New Zealand and Australia have taken a sharp decline in quality over the course of the past few years. And one of the things out of this is that planes are continually having mechanical issues and being unable to get off the tarmac.
Oh, so
In
Fern didn't have
Fern's
a plane
case,
land on his house.
no, he did not. It's just that he works in public transport, basically.
Oh,
So
the stranded people need somebody to ferry him around.
yeah, so now he's got to drive people around, which is why he's not here, because he got a call at the very last minute. But yeah, so that's why he's not here. But nevertheless, we will continue to attempt to give you a show, even if my stomach doesn't seem to want to cooperate with me today. And if you'd like to get involved with the show, you can do so by sending us email at noexcusesvtw@gmail.com. You can follow us on the Twitter at noexcusesvtw. You can join us in the Discord server, which you can get to by clicking on the link provided in the show description underneath the archive on YouTube.
Yes, indeed. So, before we jump into weeks, so that I don't accidentally forget about it, since this is actually live this week, we want to just go ahead and do the email now. It'll probably foreshadow a lot of our weeks anyway.
I mean, that's fine. I basically don't have a week to speak of because it was completely miserable at work all week. Just absolutely awful. It was the week that I expected to be the worst, and as I expected, it was in fact the worst.
My week was basically my week was relatively lax this week because next week is going to be doubled up effectively because it got cold.
It got cold.
When the weatherman didn't say it was going to get cold.
He told you last week.
He was wrong last week. He was wrong this week too. He said we didn't have to worry about the cold front sweeping across the south.
You believed him after the last week?
We should have known, should have known again. So I actually had a week this week. I will not have a week at all next week. I will be drowning in work, and it's starting from the second I go in on Monday. Because I'll be going in early to go down to deal with problems down in Northeast Georgia, and then the medical center down there. I have no idea what the problem actually is. I have to do an investigation. That could take
northeast down of you. How does that work?
It's the Northeast Georgia Medical Center is the name of the medical center.
Oh, I see.
So I have to go down there and investigate what the heck is wrong with some pressure diaphragm switches, which I not to use to begin with, especially for the applications they're using, but I digress. The rest of the week will be this week's work piled on top of next week's normal work, so it's going to be a nightmare next week. But this week was relatively okay. There wasn't too much going on.
No customer ever follows recommendation. That doesn't happen.
It's like they think I'm just talking this way, talking out of my butt. It was actually cheaper to go with the floats, and I told them this because of this particular reason. Like, those diaphragm switches almost always go out or get installed badly, and if any debris gets in there, it totally screws them up. I really just recommend floats because those just have to tip over, and as long as you tie them off right, you're good to go.
Last time I was in an engineering design meeting, we was like, you need to put pressure safety relief valves here, here, and here, and here. And the customers in-house engineer was like, that sounds really expensive. Can we just use bursting discs instead?
Yeah, this
For those that don't know, a bursting disc is it's a little disc of metal which has a line or a cross, usually a cross scored in it, and it's basically a thin piece of metal that you put over a port on the tank, and the idea is that it will explode rather than the tank exploding if it overpressures. But it's a
oh,
completely uncontrolled pressure relief system.
so instead of having a valve you can go to divert the flow. This thing's just going to explode, and that's
Well,
it.
the logic is that you can just replace it rather than replacing the entire tank because the tank went up. But what you're normally supposed to use is a pressure relief valve, which goes into an overflow header that will go into the sort of pressure overflow condensate tank or whatever. But
Yeah.
no, they just want to stick a bursting disc on there because a bursting disc is cheap as chips.
Do they feel like installing extra pumps in the throughout the building at locations where these bursting seals are? And because somebody's going to come ding them for code eventually.
Well, when we see it's not really a good idea, they're like, oh, well, maybe rather than that, we could just like put a header pipe that points directly into the air so that when the tank overpressures, it will shoot boiling hot condensate into the air over the site. It'll probably cool down before it hits the ground, right?
I mean, maybe if it's under 300 degrees, but if it's boiling, uh, depends on
Well,
how
it's
high
it's
the pressure is.
it's it's condensate, so it's superheated. It's not even at boiling point, it's way above that.
Yeah, that's also depends on how high the pressure is on the way out when it finally gives up and how high
Well,
the water goes.
the reason it explodes is because it's under pressure.
Well, yes, it's like, what are you? Who would do this, Chief? Why are
because
customers
it's
and
really because it's really cheap to do it that way. It's just outrageously unsafe.
like, as somebody that works with engineers all the time, I have to deal with engineers more than customers presenting these stupid ideas to me, and I'm like,
Well, this is the in-house engineer for a customer.
oh, okay. I'm like, I just have to stop them a lot of times when they get off on their little spiel. I'm like, wait a minute. Have you thought of the real world application of this? Because this is the most likely scenario that's going to happen here, and I can almost guarantee you it's going to happen sometime in the future. So and so is going to go wrong. This is going to happen. You have people actually installing this thing, and they're going to screw something up, and somebody's going to have to go down there and fix it because that always happens. Like, are you sure you can keep that basin pristine throughout the installation process? Are you
This was
positive you don't want a duplex reverse flow system here so that the tank doesn't explode?
the site in question was a natural gas plant, so not the sort of place you want uncontrolled chaos.
Yeah, I have had a fiberglass tank explode on me, or a customer's fiberglass tank. They did not listen to me. The tank or the pump impeller completely imploded, and one time, and the pump crunched in on itself because it was a really dinky pump. They needed a much bigger pump to begin with, and water just kept filling in that tank, and the tank burst. And they went to go check it, and their basin was in about 5 pieces. They did not tell me the full story of how they removed it or how they discovered how many pieces it was in, but I imagine it was quite the harrowing endeavor to pull that thing out.
Or they could just listen to advice and not need to do that.
Or, size this thing for 200 GPM, put a duplex system in there, and then put a check valve at the top so that you can just pull a lever if things get too high in there. That's what I told them to do. What do I know? I'm not an engineer.
What were we talking about?
I don't know. Just anytime any engineering gets brought up, just I'm reminded of everybody always assures me these people are incredibly smart and know what they're doing. And the real world interactions I've had with these people just don't reflect that.
I've interacted with very intelligent engineers in the past, but they're only very intelligent in an extremely narrow way. And I have heard the testimony from not just RSTL but multiple sources that most engineers seem to just turn into copy paste gremlins once they get out into the workforce.
Like, these people have been educated in how to do the maths and all the specifics of procedures, but they have no idea how the real world works and how to apply their knowledge when their rubber needs to meet the road or their water needs to meet the tank. So, we have a start at this email. We want to hit that up first, and then we can do weeks
Yeah,
and
sure.
knock out weekly bosses while we do our weeks.
Are you actually capable of reading that much text?
Do you want me to attempt? I guess I have not read one in a while. Sure, this did ban me once, but that ban was several years ago. Let's see.
Well, you can see if you can good England.
Definitely can't do that right now. I'm too high on Murica. Okay. Dear No Excuses. Sorry for the lack of emails for so long, but not much happened after other than various gotcha stuff. In Genshin now, I have 2 good fire characters in addition to Benny and Guoba. Going for Biker Girl and her glowy sword did a number on my primo supply, but fire is one of the elements I was sorely lacking. Also, the finale of the story was exactly what I expected. Compared to the intricacies of Fontaine, Natlan had the twist worthy of a Michael Bay movie, that is, none. Unless there are surprises for the Last Tribe or the Saurian Companion, Natlan was a big disappointment story-wise. Speaking of, what is the deal with our Saurian? The whole mark of death he has seems to be forgotten about. I found 2 areas where he was needed, but other than vague dragon lore, I didn't progress much. I think he means process much about the mini kaiju.
It didn't progress much, as in the story did not convey progress on that plot line.
Oh yeah,
he felt, because if you look at the Okinawan plot line, it's an interesting plot, more interesting than the main plot, but it doesn't really shed any light on sort of the legacy that comes down to Little One as the curse mark.
Yeah.
They mention it in passing a couple times, but they don't say anything about it per se.
Yeah, I think the sage from Ochkanatlan is also mentioned in the earlier Bubba quests.
I think the sort of the hook is supposed to be, the hook for the next part is supposed to be the sort of the private meeting between Little One and the big bad dragon priest guy.
Yeah. Get him, Bubba.
Get him.
For Star Rail, I got Firefox. Not as great as I thought she would be, but she's still a good substitute for Harmony Trailblazer, enabling 2 break teams. However, she has a fluffy tail. Also, her super break stacks with HTBs, so I can double dip Firefly. This is something I don't have any commentary on because I don't play break.
Well, I do play break, but I don't arrange it in 2 teams because I prefer to play it as a premium team and then clutch together something else for the other team. Tingyun is great. The reason she doesn't seem great is because her effect on a team is not as splashy as Harmony Trailblazers. Like, her performance is so consistent and so impossible to screw up that you kind of don't really notice very much. Like, you just end up sort of anchoring your expectations at a high baseline, and it's not like her performance is significantly greater than Harmony Trailblazers. Like, the Firefly team just more or less performs the same. What Tingyun enables is something that is basically not really used by much other than Himiko now. If you build Himiko as like a pure fiction break character and then you pair her with Fugue, what you end up with is the ability to basically set up and then go into auto battle mode without turning auto battle on, because she'll be able to just chain break over and over again because she can get pips on her counter by the second break that Tingyan enables.
Oh, if she
So
breaks Exo Toughness, that counts for Himiko?
apparently, yeah. And if you set up just right, she can just attack over and over and over and over again with her follow-up attack. It'll just keep going and going and going and going. If with a perfect setup and enough eidolons, you can just infinite loop a Fire Week. Well, it doesn't even need to be Fire Week because of Fugue. You can infinitely loop a Pure Fiction stage. It's just ridiculous when you see it in action. But while she enables that, because Super Break has been the focus lately, the primary break hasn't really been built very much. Like there aren't very many mechanics that look into that, except for the resource accumulation on Himiko for breaking as sort of like an action as opposed to a state, which is what Super Break is. So Fugue is definitely extremely powerful, but she tends to sort of spread her power across the board. It's sort of like how if you the first limited 5-star that I ever got was Ruanmei, and when she's the first limited 5-star harmony you get, you stick her in every team ever because she's a Susami knife. But what that basically does is you lose the ability to see the effect she has on the team because she just sort of raises the level of it in general terms. And when it comes to breaking, Fugue is kind of like that. She's actually incredibly powerful, but most of that power is just sort of like, well, your numbers are noticeably bigger now. She seems inspiring largely because like she has a fairly orthodox sort of AoE damage ultimate, which doesn't change the game paradigm at all, and her most of what she's going to be doing turn over turn is just doing a splash attack, and that's it. Basically, she doesn't interact with the fight much in a way that Harmony Trailblazer tends to be a bit sort of splashier. So she just doesn't leave an impression as a character in terms of mechanics. But pull her out of the equation and you'll know all about it. But it does allow you to some extent to field 2 break teams, but there's only one Ruanmei to go around, so I tend to field premium break instead. I don't at all regret pulling Fugue though, because arguably Remembrance Trailblazer is significantly more powerful than Harmony Trailblazer. What Remembrance Trailblazer doesn't do is enable a whole archetype on their own. But in terms of like total power per character, I'd say Remembrance Trailblazer's got a higher ceiling. Most of what the capabilities are of Harmony Trailblazer are kind of baked into the kit, and you can't really do much from there on. But Remembrance Trailblazer is a really, really high ceiling for use because of that basically as yet untapped into true damage.
Yeah, also Harmony Trailblazer, if you build your team as a break team with Harmony Trailblazer as its core support, that team is going to have 2 modes turned on and turned off. It's going to be very binary on whether or not you've got Harmony Trailblazer's ult activated or not. You're going to notice immediately as soon as you turn it on.
Harmony Trailblazer's ult does not fall off often. Like Harmony Trailblazer's a really high energy regen rate. Usually, if you can't up the ult every turn, something has gone horribly wrong.
Yeah, the only time I've really used it is in the fight with Sunday at the Inakoni story, back when I had just up my world level and had no break characters, and had my characters that I did have were not at all built for current world level, and I had to find a way to cobble together something for this boss fight with Harmony Trailblazer practically mandatory. They give you the trial one in the story that was way better built than any character I had on my roster.
Yeah, well, it's not something you normally have to worry about. Things can go bad, things can go wrong, and you can end up with your ult falling off and needing to take a turn to get it back. But that's pretty uncommon in most circumstances. Generally speaking, it's not going to be the limiting factor. Like your limiting factor in your break team is going to be Firefly fell a move short on getting her energy back again, and so you've got to spend an extra turn in Normie Sam mode.
Kick something.
Or Rapper fell short in energy regen and wasn't able to quite get back to ult. Because basically Rapper's pretty much useless if she isn't almost or actually looping her ult. Her outside of ult damage is trivial. And her effect on the battle as well is trivial.
Yeah, I
You
tried
don't want
borrowing
to be in
her.
that situation.
I tried borrowing her a few times for some farming nodes before the Herda, and like, yeah, she's actually slower than Fei Xiao.
Her curve, her power curve, is incredibly steep. It's like terrible, 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 terrible. And then when you hit a certain threshold of number of enemies available to you, and with which have the appropriate weaknesses and so on, suddenly her power spikes through the roof. Like she performs vastly better than Firefly in a situation where you can guarantee an ample number of imaginary weak enemies, or you've got Fugue to ensure that the weakness doesn't matter, and you've got a good supply of enemies. But she's even more joined at the hip to Fugue than Firefly is because of her lack of weakness and stall. Because while she can deplete toughness without needing to target weakness when she's in her ult mode, her energy regen, a lot of it depends on breaks happening on the battlefield. And since she's the one that you really want to be doing the breaking most of the time, you kind of need to have that imaginary weakness or Fugue available to provide the element agnostic effect. So yeah, but Firefox is one of those characters who is sort of a necessity to do a particular job, and is never going to look particularly impressive. Like Ryan May doubles the amount of toughness damage you do, and at some point after using her a lot, you start to forget that she's doubled your toughness damage, and then when you go back to normal, you realize just how overprivileged you were.
Yeah, I'm here to tell you, as somebody that has had to go through several APOC Shadow cycles now, where basically the entirety I would try to break an end game, the condition for triggering the bonus effect is break the enemy. All the people, when you go online look at the APOC Shadow guys, just like, oh, just use Ron May. It's easy. I want to smack him in the face.
Yeah, I expect that they're going to try and deprecate Ryan May soon, because she's still she's got the highest appearance rate of any character in the game on in-game teams. Simply because she works everywhere.
Yeah, and it does, well, especially recently, the last 3 or 4 cycles, the condition for triggering like the APOC Shadow bonus effect that you have to trigger to get a good score is break the enemy. There's only one character that makes that go faster. Anyway, as for ZZZ, Miyabi, that's all. She one-shots rooms in the new Wing Apollo Zero. All resources are going towards her. She broke the game. She, however, lacks a fluffy tail. What else? What else? What else too was lacking were the colors in the new event. Whose idea was it to make an event take place in 50 Shades of Grey area? No landmarks to guide you either. This is the Bang Boo TV levels of visual stimuli, except this made my eyes hurt while exploring it for a while. But at least we got Super Bang Boo 64 Collectathon, if that's your jam. Update. I was writing this email last week, just didn't finish it. Miyabi is pretty much built, so my energy is going towards Archer Boy, who went ahead and replaced Brill Bro in my lineup. Oh, I guess you mean Anton. But now I can do good electricity damage. Ether is still missing since I don't have Booty Cop, but maybe I'll get her on a rerun, or if one of the new characters are good at Ether. Update 2.
No offense to Zhu, I wouldn't recommend pulling for.
She is a damage hose that is not very high on the amount of hosing she can do. It's just her element that makes her.
It's like I wouldn't recommend pulling a limited benefit to Luke either.
Like, Zoo is a damage hose, and she will get the job done. If the enemy is weak to Ether, she will probably be enough to get you over the score threshold. However, going with a neutral element character that just outputs more raw damage than she does is probably a better option, because her requirements to get the damage she does have are pretty stringent. And without her W engine, it's really, really, really hard to get any kind of real damage out of her. And even then, it requires a stun, which means she's married at the hip to Kingi because she really, really, really wants the bonus stun damage increase from Kingi because all of her damage goes in the stun window. She gets basically no benefits to attacking the enemy if they're not in a stun window. So be careful with Zhu. Zhu is a flexible pull, and for the time she came out, I would have recommended her, just because of her element and the fact she was another damage hose in a game that did not have very many characters in 1.1. Nowadays, you're better off pulling Jane, even if Jane is element neutral.
My sort of deeply paranoid speculation is that Zhu Yuan is the reason that we don't have more ether characters, ether anomaly and attack. I think that they know that people have perceived that she's a bit mid at this point, and that the only way they're going to get some decent reruns out of her is to give people more exposure to her as a character and not have any alternatives as a mechanic. Yeah. And then the moment that there's a new anomaly attacker or a new ether attacker or ether anomaly character, she will never be pulled by anybody ever again except for people who have just fallen for her booty.
Yeah, except for
she's a character that I enjoy as a character in a story, but I can't imagine actually pulling for her. I'd rather just mold over not having any ether.
Yeah, and the benefit she does give you, all ether weak enemies are paired with ice weakness. It's almost like ether is meant to be a premium, different kind of weakness that not very many characters.
It's not strictly true anymore, but that's by far the most common.
Yeah,
pairing.
So it's you will definitely see ice paired with other weaknesses. I think one of the bosses this week might be fire and ether or something. But because there's that weird corrupted variant of ethereals now that got introduced right after Bernice came out. That's fire ether weak. but point is, they always have a second weakness in addition to ether.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen any that are pure ether weak alone. You've seen pure ones for other elements, but not ether weak. I think that they also know that it would not look very good for them since they've only provided a limited solution.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if ether was always planned to be like a rare element for player characters to have, but or at least the idea was on the table that just would be a bonus weakness on ethereal type weak enemies or ethereal type enemies.
Nicole.
Yeah, Nicole, but Nicole's Nicole. There's only one Nicole to go around, and demand for her is quite high with Deadly Assault. One team gets to use her. What you call it? So yeah, be careful with Zhu. It's just the setup for her damage hosen is just, it takes a long time. It's really hard to execute in most stun windows, especially reduced stun windows, and it needs her W engine to really, really get it off the ground into acceptable numbers. And even then, you're still doing less than Jane, and that's if Jane was element neutral.
I'm always a bit about pulling attack W engines. It's like, well, attack is probably the venue where there are the most decent free to play options, because basically they're relatively uncomplicated, all told. Which isn't to say that signature W engines for attack characters can't be cracked. It's just that, generally speaking, you can usually make do without.
Yeah. Anomaly.
Other characters are a little bit more of a, like, my opinion is that I've basically for Bernice, I put all of my all of the battle passes that I've ever bought for ZZZ have gone into the anomaly one because it's relatively decent. But as far as free to play options go, for anomaly characters are really, really mediocre. I've got the signature on Miyabi, I've got the signature on Grace. There's not great options available. There's okay options available at best. But because anomaly is not focused on raw numbers output, but another mechanic that drives numbers output, you end up with a situation where having a suitable W engine is a narrower prospect than it is for attack, where you can, for attack characters, you can basically replace anything with sufficiently large numbers.
Yeah, and push comes to shove, you can always probably scoop somebody else's signature W engine if another attack character comes out with a decent one.
Yeah, they tend to be a little bit more character agnostic on average. They've also given out two really good free to play ones. The purple one, what was it from the
Yeah,
from the
the TV
the
event.
Big Bang Boo event?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and then there
and the more recent one.
from the gray area, and yeah, like we mentioned before a week or two ago on the show. I think the gray area was a testing bed of them using simple assets to prove a point.
I didn't mind it. It didn't bother me at all. I think Serathis probably needs to turn down the brightness on his monitor. Like, I didn't have any problem with it at all.
You think your bloom
It's like
circled back around, made it so it didn't hurt your eyes?
bloom is a function
Oh, that was your
of
reshade that had the turbo bloom.
reshade. It's not, and because of that, my monitor settings are probably a bit dowdier than most. But yeah, I didn't have any problem with the setting. Like I expect that. In fact, I kind of like this better in some ways. Like not for all purposes, but if your narrative purpose is to emphasize the unnatural alienness of the space, then this is more suitable. And number two, this is what the Sea of Quanta looks like in Honkai Impact Third in various situations as well. And so it was very sort of compatible with my impression of otherworldly spaces in Hoyo generally.
Yeah, they could probably go. I would like to see actual environments presented in this way. I think if they're going to go with this type of environment in the Hollows, because the Hollows are slightly different. I know Hollow Zero is special, but
But like, if what this opens up is if they refine this technique, it means that they can produce large quantities of open world content on the cheap. And over time, they'll be able to refine it so that it looks a little bit less samey, so it looks a bit more deliberate. This is just the very first deployment of it. And if they can make this the norm instead of doing Bangbu TV, I'm perfectly happy with that.
yeah, and but yeah, I'm thinking something like, what if the Ballerina Twin story used this type of exploratory mode with the Ballerina Twins having rooms flipped upside down where you're walking on the ceiling and stuff? I think that would be really cool. I think they could easily move in that direction because the Hollows, the general Hollows, do allow for that kind of stuff without stepping on any Honkai lore. They've already
If
been
you're going
established.
to if you're going to be producing a game which is going to be ongoing content indefinitely into the future, you need to have a way to produce that material in bulk. You need to have flexible tile sets and the ability to generate large amounts of content, ideally not procedurally, because procedurally generated content tends to be shite.
Yeah. The idea is that as they get more levels built into this system and more tile sets available, they'll be able to put together more and more levels of variance. But for their first one, they're kind of stuck with a
Yeah,
simple design because they
a-
need to get this thing tested.
yeah. As while I don't really want to be positioned in playing Gacha Company Defense Force, but
I'll do it for
the
ZZZ.
reality
I won't do it
the
for the other ones
reality
with
is
Strong
that
Pro.
we demanded they get rid of Bangbu TV and replace it with something that actually resembled the gameplay we signed up for. So they are redesigning the game from scratch. It's all nice for them to put together, big town areas with bespoke assets and whatnot. But the purpose of the Bangbu TV is the same as the purpose of the grey area. They serve the same role. They are just designed to be a cheap environment to manufacture to put gameplay into. And since our demands were much, much higher than their original outlay, they had need to come up with an efficient way of doing it and quickly. Because people were the only reason that they will have responded. Now, I'll give them a certain amount of credit for this being a passion project because it feels like one. But The only reason that they would have responded as fast as they did to the Bangbu TV issue would be if they had seen a drop off in player engagement as a result. Probably as a result of that the Vault event. The one that rewards the W engine.
Yeah.
Because that was the first long event. Because Arpeggio Fault was clearly made, it was clearly finished at the point overlapping with them abandoning Bangbu TV as a proposition. But I think the length of that Vault event, because that is a long event too. It's not Arpeggio Fault long, but it's still really long.
Yeah, we had Arpeggio Fault right after, so it doesn't even register in terms of length to me.
But it was long. If you try and think about it from the 10,000 foot view, that's going to have burned a lot of people out on Bangbu TV entirely. They would have received negative feedback for it. They would have seen a drop in player engagement when they released that as the long-term, large-scale event, because it filled the same role as Arpeggio Fault, right? It was a long-duration event with a really lucrative premium reward you can't get elsewhere. And people would have just disengaged because they were so sick of Bangbu TV at that point.
I imagine
that would have been a really, really loud signal to them as developers, I think.
They definitely do have the completion rate for Bangbu TV levels for the bonus side quests and stuff, and just saw how many people weren't engaged with them. Like
I haven't done them. I've still got a quest log with dozens of blue quests in it, because every time I think about, oh, maybe I should do some side quests, it's like, yeah, but most of them are Bangbu TV ones. I don't really feel like it.
the motivating factor for me doing all of them was the announcement of no more Bangbu TV.
So you remove it from your life.
Yeah,
like a tumor.
I could excise this thing from my gameplay experience entirely.
Just lance the boil and move on with your life.
Yeah, not ever have to think about it again. All right. So he continues. Update 2. Got the Pokemon spec in HSR, along with Lingsha and Foxxiao. Completely drained my Jade and Starlight reserves. In addition to my normal ticks, I pulled enough to replenish the Starlight. But now I have a proper follow-up team and can field 2 break teams if need be. Just need to trace them up, which is going to take a while, with Remembrance Trailblazer also tagging along. So far, this is the only Remember Berry character, but at least we get a free 4-star weapon that is also added to the Forgotten Hall shop. Yeah, this is why I'll talk about my
I clowned that up. I accidentally bought 5 because I'm a freaking clown. Oh, well.
Oh, you got an extra one now. I can't say much about the story and setting. The new time mechanics was interesting. Unlike Pinaconi, it didn't restart the music when you walked up a wall. Something to
I didn't mind that. I liked that. Because it changes key every time you do it. I actually rather liked it.
Yeah. So I didn't notice, to be honest.
It doesn't restart. It changes the key of the song each time. It's the same melody, but the key changes every time you change the gravity 90 degrees.
I see. Something of a nitpick, but it was making me, he bolds me, walk up a wall. The final boss of 3.0 took me almost 10 tries, and that's with consumables, but finally managed to beat it with adventuring, because of course adventuring is the solution to everything.
I'm not sure why he found it so difficult. Like, it does hit really, really hard, and I didn't have adventuring. I healed through it like a normal person. And
bunnies are a pretty good second if you're going to have a second instead of adventuring.
It's true. I did swarm it with bunnies. Bunnies are a necessary part of my strategy, and they are always present. However, I also have the Hurter, and the Hurter got wrecked by the boss, but not before the boss was already pretty weakened, and then Mini Hurter finished the boss off, because I used a Hurter team for it, obviously.
I can't remember what my team was now, but it involved Jade. And Jade and Fei Xiao, I think, were both on the team. And just learned real quick, don't ignore those sticks.
I used Lingsha Hurter Sunday, and since I have 2 Erudition characters on that team, I did ignore the sticks, because I knew that they would die anyway.
Yeah, I had one of those.
It only took me 1 try, and I didn't use any consumables, and I don't think I even remembered to use my talents before the fight. But we got her done.
Yeah, it only took me one try too. Jade managed to get him low enough that Fei Xiao could pop the spear pretty good. They did pop eventually in a later phase of the fight. Or they popped early, I can't remember, and it got me real close to dead, but it didn't kill me.
Yeah, I accidentally lined it up so that he used like his special and then his ult and then his ult all in a row without me getting a turn. So everybody ended up on like one hit point except for the Herter who got dead.
But yeah. And yes, adventuring will just solve all problems forever until they finally introduce the solution. The fact that his shields are just bonkers and
Which will be
stack
enemies doing true damage.
and refresh. Even if you just
I,
put a cap on shielding, like you cannot shield more
yeah,
25% of your character's HP if you get this debuff.
I hope that they understand what a mess they made of their damage curve. But they seem to be really reckless on that team. Like, I thought that the Acheron World talent was a mistake, and it has proven to be a mistake design-wise. They've now painted themselves into a corner where every time they want you to fight, they have to force you into combat without warning, which sort of obviates the existence of combat prep talents. So they ended up shooting themselves in the foot. They've taken a design element and they've rendered it not as relevant as it should be. And this is simply because they thought it was a cool idea, not because they thought about it very carefully. And if you watch I think you watched that one as well, where they talked about the design of that, and the discussion seemed to boil down to they thought it was really cool, so they just went ahead and did it.
Yeah,
And I think it was a disaster. But what I'm wondering is how many other things are getting up like that, because I think Aventurine is one of them. There's like, what if we have a character who can just stack shields to the ceiling?
what if we can have
Well,
him
you've just
auto refresh
removed
them?
damage. You've just removed incoming damage from your game for people who have that team.
Yeah,
Good work.
let's make the shields auto refresh. And let
Every other tank up until that point has a weakness. Aventurine does not. Well, Aventurine has one weakness, but they haven't exploited it, which is that his debuff game is not as great as it should be
oh
in order to be perfect.
he's got a band-aid fix for that in his kit. He increases the whole team's effect res through the roof like Fei Xiao. Oh, not Fei Xiao.
No,
Feng Shui
no,
Wing.
it's not through the roof. It's not through the roof, and at no point can you guarantee it.
Oh, you can't guarantee it, but
So that
it's a
just
band-aid.
puts you in restart mode, basically. Like
Yeah.
you get a bad play, you have to restart.
Yeah.
But and I suppose the logic is, oh well, I've actually seen people complaining that that Aventurine isn't strong enough because they're bad, I guess. Which is why I'm worried.
While I can agree with the general community sentiment of do not let them get away with letting bugs sit in the game for this long if they directly impact a player character, the fact that it was adventuring that they were complaining about takes a whole lot of the teeth out of it, because it did not matter that adventuring was bugged. His shield strength is not going to affect your clear time whatsoever, number one. And number two, even bugged, his shields were still too high to break through.
Yeah, I don't get people who are bad enough to complain about Aventurine's power. But yeah, I think that they really need to come up with a solution to that, and they need to recognize the errors that they're making, where just because an idea is cool and is going to sell well doesn't mean that you should just do it without thinking about the consequences. Because I think that Acheron thing must have turned out to be bigger than they thought it was. They thought it was cool, but now they have to design around it.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what Venturing do. He causes all problems to go away if you use him. I try to use Wopo whenever I can if it's new content, because Adventuring is going to take all the teeth out of it. But the shoe is, because of compounding on the Acheron issue, I don't know when a boss fight's coming.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, you can't prepare for fights anymore a lot of the time, because in order to obviate the Acheron problem, they have to spring them on you. But yeah, but prior to Aventuring, all of the sustains had very clear weaknesses. Like, Ho-Ho has very specific energy requirements to operate. Fushuan can't deal with high damage AoE situations, period. She'll just get wrecked. Jeopard has extremely high energy requirements and speed requirements in order to function, and even then, it's unlikely you'll be able to do it seamlessly. Like, and let's not talk about Bailu. there's always going to be various weaknesses to sustains, except Aventurine basically doesn't have any meaningful ones.
Yeah, and what's worse is their end game is entirely your ability to participate is dictated whether you can stay alive or not. Past few cycles, Tricolia on the cycle past before this one was just awful because she was set up in a way that she would get so many turns that you would just be chain restarting before you even got your first turn to get your sustain engine set up if your characters didn't have enough HP. Unless you put Adventuring on that team.
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't have Aventurine. I don't even remember what I did, but I think I just sort of survived by the skin of my teeth. But the I think Aventurine would have been fine if they gave him no effect res, if he had no meaningful effect on effect res whatsoever, because that way you'd be making a strategic decision on, I will just go for hard immortality for this fight and hope that I don't cop any unpleasant debuffs to the face. And then on the other side where the debuffs are more dangerous, I'll put my debuff handling sustains.
Oh,
Like, I think that would be a better strategic decision to make, rather than, oh well, I'll pick the one fight where I don't need to think about sustain and put Aventurine there.
yeah. The fix to Adventuring is really simple. All you got to do is take the shield refresh off of his talent.
But they can't change that.
I
That's
know,
the thing.
I know, but it's like if they took the shield refresh off of his talent and put it on his ultimate instead, all of a sudden he's an neutral to negative character, and there's a cost to taking Adventuring on the team damage.
Yeah, well, the thing is that was what they put in for Lingsha, basically, is that a lot of Lingsha's effectiveness is tied up in her spending energy, and like her healing is, even though she doesn't do most of her healing in a direct fashion, her healing, if you view it as sort of like a rolling average over turns, is affected by the amount of energy she puts in. She needs to put in a certain minimum amount to keep her healing engine rolling, and the more she puts in, the more healing comes out. It's it's a very, very sort of fluid expenditure, but she's not positive by any stretch of the imagination in most circumstances, unless the incoming damage is extremely low.
Where,
So
whereas with Adventuring, if you have to use a single SP on Adventuring, you built him wrong.
yeah, so same applies with Gallagher. Like, Gallagher is the more SP positive version of Lingsha. Like, he essentially never presses the skill button unless there's like a nuke hits you of some kind that you really, really urgently need to deal with. Other than that, all of his healing is just a constant trickle from his normal abilities. So, you know, the SP positive design is a thing and does work. And you can play Lingsha SP positive if the incoming damage is low enough. But the you're paying a cost to your team's energy economy using her as a sustain. And I think that's going to apply to a lot of characters. There are rumors coming out that one of the new Remembrance characters is going to be a sustain, which is kind of interesting because it means that there's basically nothing characteristic about the sustain archetypes anymore if they put one in Remembrance as well. But
Well, Remembrance as a path can dip its toes in pretty much everything because all it's defined by is it has pet.
yeah, well, it has on-field pet
Yeah, like that.
as
That.
opposed to off-field pet.
But there's nothing stopping a Remembrance from synergizing with any of the other paths or aping their lunch, just because it has a pet. So yeah, that's where we're at with Star Rail characters and Adventuring. Okay, what you got next? We're almost at the end of the email, so I'll just go through the rest of it.
So it must be Doom time now.
Yeah, it's Doom time. 2025 also meant that we got the 2024 CAC Awards. Unlike last year, there were no map sets that blew my mind, like My House or Insanity Edge, not to be confused with Insanity's Edge from the same author. Still, there were a few standouts like Pirate Doom 2, points for creativity, not just the reskins of enemies, but the levels themselves, Pirate Fortress, Sunken Cities, Ghost Ships, Voodoo Temples, and Grog. Or Outpost 13, a very detailed map inspired by the things of John Carpenter fame. Or Road to Hades, where every map had at least one small twist that made it interesting. I'm mentioning these two, because apparently they were debut map sets. if their first release are this quality, I can't wait to see what's coming down the line from them. Enjoy the Trump presidency, Serathis. So,
I gotta say, it's been a rich bounty of sort of memes and salt from the new presidency.
oh yeah, like seeing if I can England. There is no England in me right now. There is only America.
And the all the videos of sobbing migrants. It's like, oh, we broke the law and invaded your country, now you're sending us back home. How could you?
I saw a video that made me laugh of some California uh, auto loan company that loaned out vehicles, and they were pitching a fit because all the self-deporting illegals were just taking the cars that they loan with them and not giving them back.
Oh, maybe you should have loaned them to people who were, I don't know, citizens,
Maybe
or at
people,
least legal residents.
maybe not criminals.
Yeah, like they're a criminal already. They broke into the country. Why would you not expect them to steal your car?
That
This
one
is
just
what burglary is.
like that one made me happy, and I have not watched much of the Lotus Eaters since the Trump presidency. I watched part of their inauguration stream, but I can just feel deep in Sargon's heart and his buddies' hearts, please, please, Lord, I've seen what you do for other people, and I want that for me. So it has been a good time for those of us that are not Kool-Aid drinkers. So yeah, I don't have much to say about the specific Doom maps you mentioned. Although they're, if you recommend them, anybody that happens across the show, I'm sure will be able to check them out and give a good time. Maybe one day when I'm possessed to go check out Doom, we can keep them on our minds to take a look at. Um, but on that front, there is a boomer shooter that I have poked at. I have not just poked at it. I made it a little bit further than when I last mentioned. With a medieval, it is a boomer shooter, but it has a VR version that is made tailor made for VR that comes with the game, and that's a trip. Retro graphics in VR with those 2D monsters coming to get you. That's something. I'll report on that one once I actually make some decent progress in it. So, I think that's all we got for Serathis' email. Thank you for the email, Serathis. I suppose we can move on to weeks. Presumably it is still streaming. I'm checking the stream real quick. I'm paranoid after monkeying with all my hardware settings. Yes, we are still good. Okay. So we got weeks.
Wow.
Well,
Kind of. Sort of. Maybe. Not really. My week sucked. It sucked horribly. It sucked horribly because this was sort of like... It was always going to suck because this is sort of the last week that all my staff are on leave, all my senior staff, and we hit peak production this week. Like, the flow of work coming in had normalized back to normal high levels of work coming in, except that it was just me doing all of it. So I am outrageously exhausted and constantly fielding demands from people that I have to be doing this, that, or the other because, well, it's my job. And it's like, yes, it is my job. Unfortunately, I'm not just doing my job. I'm doing everybody else's job too. So yeah, and the auditors have also moved the audit up this year from normally it's like May, June, and they want to do it in sort of like early to mid April this year. So I have much less time to prepare for it. So I'm unhappy about that as well. Basically, work is totally miserable right now, and that consumed pretty much all of my energy this week. In terms of raw time, it didn't. While I did have to do some like really late nights, it was not like an every night thing, but I just had so little gas in the tank by the end of the week that I could barely move. So I haven't played any video at all, which is extremely frustrating to me because I keep seeing events popping up. And it's like, well, I would love to, but I legit don't have the energy to do anything right now.
But yeah,
So,
the next Cheesetopia tier event is in.
well, there are heaps of things popping up in ZZZ. I just haven't touched any of them
Yeah,
because I don't have the gas. I haven't touched any story. I haven't touched any events. Haven't done any of the stuff in Star Rail either. I get home and I'm like, I just don't have anything to give. I'm totally spent. I can't do it. Hopefully things will normalize a bit, at least for a little while, I hope, because I don't know how many more of these weeks I can chain together before I will literally die at my desk. So, yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything I can even really talk about. I did pull for Astria, and I got her. I won the 50-50 for once. I got her just a hair before hard pity, so close that it really doesn't make much difference. But I contemplated and ummed and ahed about her W engine, but I agree with the consensus that it's pretty much, for the most purposes, too close to Bashful Demon to be worth pulling for. And I already have sort of like, I've got a completed Bashful Demon plus another like rank 2 Bashful Demon. So
same boat.
there's not really any reason for me to feel a sense of urgency to pull for Astriar's W engine, especially with the number of other characters that are coming down the pike. So I have enough in the bank to at least gamble on Evelyn, maybe even guarantee Evelyn if I get enough polychrome out of the events before she comes out. So if she comes out, then I'll probably pull for her since she plays pretty hard into Astriar's mechanics in addition to being the same faction. So it's probably a reasonable choice to start building another team around those two as an additional option for fielding a cohesive unit.
You wait. Fire Ambi ain't dead yet. Still got one chance left when her squad mates come out.
I wouldn't bet on it.
She's probably dead. But yeah, that's the only talk about Evelyn I see in terms of her performance is, oh my goodness, power crept Soldier 11.
Well, she's basically blonde Kafka, so I'm fine with pulling for her. We'll see how she feels to play. If she feels like completely obtuse to play, then I probably won't bother.
You get a lot of demo opportunities to try her out early in the obligatory new character. Go to the TV in the back of the store and talk to it and do the special little event for these 4 trial stages with the new characters. So they've already got her. They got Astra's up there, and Astra's force you to use Astra and Eve.
Right.
You get a lot of time there, and she has playable appearances.
Right. I haven't even looked at it. I not even glanced at it, let alone actually done it. Haven't had the energy. But yeah, we'll see. I'll see how I feel about her. Like, because I'm not a native to the genre. A character feeling good to play is important, unless that character is Astra, in which case, if you aren't particularly trying to game any particular chain attack combination, you could just, press triangle and be done with her. It doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah, just lead with character, press triangle, R1, back to your main.
And then Miyabi all over everything.
Or Judgment Nuts.
And the reason why I'm not particularly focused on pulling for Blonde Kafka is because Astra will work with more or less anything under the sun. But there's not really any need to focus on, oh no, I really need to have these 2 characters together, otherwise it won't work. It's not their bond is not quite as tight as the Miyabi Yanagi one, where each one is very, 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 very obviously made to interlock with the other one to the extent we're not having the, premium disorder farmer who can just farm disorder after disorder after disorder is like that. It's not part of the mechanics of uh of Astra to have Evelyn present. Evelyn just happens to be able to take good advantage to what Astra offers.
Yeah, we're not in a Zoo and Kingi situation where Zoo really, 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 really wants Kingi. Kingi's not so married to Zoo, but Zoo really needs Kingi.
Yeah, at any rate, with premium Anby, like Anby Pro Max coming down the line,
Uncompressed Ambi.
I'm sort of interested in pulling for her because I like Anby as a character. Like I think all of the cunning hairs are fun characters in their own ways. Uh, but Anby has been carrying me since I started playing the game, so I'm interested in pulling for her. Trigger looks uncannily like the puppets used by the Hersher of Domination in Honkai Impact 3rd, which is incredibly unsettling. But she is in her own way also Anby Pro Max. So we'll have to see how that goes. Like how is Trigger going to stack up next to Chingy? How are they going to distinguish them from each other in functionality terms? What are they going to do there?
Or can the Bang
I'm
Boo
very curious.
Bang Boo hits not keep up with blindfold booty?
It's sort of hard to tell where they're going. But yeah, I guess we'll have to wait for more details on that. I do have Soldier 11 now, much to my chagrin. Um,
I've got two.
I haven't built her and I've never used her, and I'm not sure I ever will. The way things are going, her kit to read it basically said, "Oh yeah, I'm Diluc except less so,
Yes,
less of a numerically dominant character, but just a garden variety beat stick."
I light things on fire, but we already have a Zoomer that can do that at home.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll see. I'll have to appraise it. I've got still got a safe amount of polychrome in the bank, and if these events help that out a bit, then I should be able to guarantee a character at least.
There's like 5,000 plus polychrome probably between all the events
The
and the login and the codes are still available. I didn't think about it. I meant to post the link of the page that has them all. Dump it in case any of the codes are still. Do I got to pull up my other browser for that? I do.
I have come to sort of in Star Rail, I dread losing the 50-50, but I don't really care who I get because I know I won't get somebody that I want, because the only one that I really want out of losing the 50-50 is Himiko, and I've never gotten a Himiko from losing a 50-50 before. Instead, I just get Jeopard over and over and over again. The same thing applies to ZZZ, but it feels somehow even worse in the sense that the nature of the game makes you feel a little bit more hamstrung within a sub premium character to begin with. But having just repeatedly pulled Grace over and over again at the start of the game, and having that bizarre RNG completely screw my roster development for months has sort of given me a bit of trauma about pulling on the gacha. It's like, oh no, what if it's just Grace again? What if I'm going to see another hard pity flushed down the tubes without managing to increase my roster at all? It's just been incredibly traumatic for me.
Whenever I lose a 50-50, I'm hoping it's Grace Arena.
I would love to get Arena, but the fact that it's always Grace is like it's one thing if you've already got a developed roster, but this was when I was starting out. I'm not like you who just ensured that I pulled everything that I wanted by spending as much money as was necessary to do so. This was like, oh well, I'm just gonna pull and we'll see what we get. And so every time it's Grace, it's just Grace. it's Grace, and then it's Grace, and then it's Grace, and then it's Grace. And I was just stuck with Grace as the only tool in the toolkit. That's not how it's supposed to work.
I mean, she is a tool that remains viable in the toolbox if you can pry her away
This is
from
the only
AOs.
Ho-Yo game that needs 3 teams.
I mean, well, I mean, if you count Imaginary and Theater, how much is 17 characters?
Nobody can do Imaginary Theatre. Except for those people who have been... Those people who show off their inventory and they've got well over 100 of every boss mat.
People that have played every day since day one.
That have cleared every Trounce domain every week since day one.
Oh, goodness. So Lolly fall down. Yeah.
I reached over to take a swig of beer and I fell off. Anyway, yeah, so it's sort of I don't know anything about the content. Please don't spoil me. And I don't know what I'm going to do about pulling going forward. If Evelyn is horribly underwhelming, then I might once more contemplate whether or not I feel like pulling an Astria SW engine. But generally speaking, in the case of a support, most of their kit tends to be on the character. The same more or less applies in Star Rail. The only reason that I pull on sustain signature light cones is usually because I like the character. That's why I've got Fu Xuan's one, I've got Ling Sha's one. I have a relatively high rate of pulling signature light cones for sustains in Star Rail just because I like the character. Well, one that I've really regretted in that category though is I didn't pull Ryan May's one, and every time her banner goes by, I'm like, man, I really want that signature light cone so that I can complete the Ryan May experience, but can't quite justify it because it's always an awkward time. But oh well, a similar case with Robin, less so because I'm less attached to Robin than I am to Ryan May. But I also don't really like the fact that it sort of requires you to do slightly obtuse gameplay to compensate for its foibles.
Oh, you
as
have
opposed to the blind idiot approach that I use to playing Robin normally.
Yeah, it does make it so you have to slow your roll, and you lose a bit of immediate upfront attack bonus from other light cones if or auto wean, for instance, farming node has enough energy to ult right out the gate, or after one skill use.
Yeah.
But in proper content, it's very helpful.
Anyways,
usually it's hard to have energy there anyway.
Anyways, in Star Rail proper, I haven't touched the new event at all. I don't even know what it's about. I haven't looked at it. I haven't read any part of the description. I don't even remember what it was supposed to be about. I'll have to get into it when I've got some time. It's up for like another 30 odd days, so I'm not concerned about having passed out rather than play it in the past. But yeah, I haven't touched the new Apocalyptic Shadow yet either. I don't even know how challenging it's going to be.
The new Star Rail event is not time consuming at all. You can do it in an afternoon.
Hopefully the new Apoc Shadow cycle I can at least get a respectable result in, but because I've got one premium team and I've got a variety of detritus in the other slot, the results tend to be a little bit variable.
You should be fine because you have the Herda. You have more than one erudition character.
I absolutely adore the Herta. She's fun to play, but I just like her character generally, and like the sort of casual narcissism. And I like all of the corollary content too. Like her little cooking trailer is my favorite. I think probably amongst the animated trailers that they've done. I just think it's really charming. Did you watch that little music video about Herta and Silverwolf that I posted?
I did not watch that one, no.
I thought it was kind of amusing as well, but it has Dancing Nanook in it, so you have to watch it.
That's not Dancing Numby.
No,
Speaking of
it's not
Numby,
Dancing Numby, but it's at least as ridiculous.
This Apoc Shadow. Oh, I'll get to it more in my week, but when I saw on the Swarm Disaster boss two completely irrelevant bonuses and bring two erudition characters for a 60% attack boost.
The N in RNG is for Numby.
Yeah. Numby was not on that team. Numby was on the Fantilia team. But man, I spent hours restarting for good Numby RNG to finally get that boss down. Hours.
But yeah, we'll see how that goes. I haven't touched it yet. Haven't had time. It's just too tiring to think about, to be honest. I really need some time to recover some energy. In a couple of weeks is going to be Waitangi Day, the much maligned national holiday of New Zealand, that results in an absolute political shitfight every time it rolls around. Similar to Australia Day in Australia, except Australians are a little bit more pragmatic about it, whereas there's the lobby of people trying to keep it a live issue in New Zealand is significantly larger and more powerful than Australia Day 1 in Australia, so it causes problems every year. I miss when I think it was I think there was a one year the National Party was just like, you know what, this is bullshit. We're not going to participate this time, and that attracted a great deal of opprobrium. But honestly, it should probably be abolished. Like the whole Waitangi affair has just become a huge problem in this country. But unfortunately, there's no political will to actually resolve the situation. There's been a huge debacle about it. Like the thing that went viral some weeks ago of that stupid Maori bint in Parliament trying to do a haka, even though women don't do hakas, but something cultural. That went viral, but that was all surrounding the Waitangi thing as well. Basically, the attempt of one of the centre-right parties to try and come up with a bill to resolve the conflict once and for all just fell flat on its face because everybody was too scared of being called a racist, as usual. I don't even understand that. Like, the only thing you need to do to completely defang being called a racist is to not care. That's literally the only thing you need to do.
You are
So don't care.
But the problem is the people in power are married to their image perception by that's how they validate themselves as human beings. They get called something that they don't like or something that even has a slightly negative connotation. Worse than punching them in the gut.
100 years ago, you actually had to be, at least semi-good at being a politician to be a politician.
Well, 100
There were
years
some
ago, dueling was still
required job
legal.
skills. But anyway, in theory, that's a public holiday, but public holidays become a unique conundrum for me because, number one, I run a business that is open every day, so I have to staff it somehow. Number two, my management forbids me from not taking public holidays because it's too expensive for me to take public holidays. And number three, nevertheless, I'm expected to accomplish the same amount of work despite not being at work somehow. So yeah, there's a lot of pressure this year because the economy is in such a state right now that I have to be a penny pincher as well, and they want me to take heaps of leave and stuff, but also I need to be at work every day. So yeah, there's no solution for me in any way. I'm getting tighter and tighter with each passing week. So I don't know how long this is going to last. I may just die one day. Might not even see it coming. I'll just fall asleep and not wake up ever again. I wish that they were remotely reasonable, but nobody is anymore. Anyway, the Genshin, I haven't done anything in the events there either. I've dabbled a little bit in the start of the Lantern Right one, and I like the story. I like interacting with the characters. It feels a bit more fresh compared to Nightland, which felt like a real slump. and I really like a lot of the Liyue characters, especially Hu Tao. Hu Tao is one of my favorites in the game, as far as characters go. If
I
I'd been
have
playing
not.
at the time she came out, I would have probably pulled her and then been one of those people who still swears that she's the best fire character in the game.
I have not done the lantern rite yet. I spent all my gotcha free time allocated. I'm not even started it yet.
The only thing I've done is dabble a little bit in the story, and I think that it's just like the first chapter is out or something like that. It seems like there's probably a sequential release because the main quest just sort of ended without anything being resolved. So presumably there's the next part is going to come out shortly. Um, I haven't done any of the events this time, so I don't even know how they're characterized. One of them looks like a match game of some kind, just like clicking rapidly through the mandatory tutorial windows that pop up as you go about your lantern rite business. But yeah, that seems like it's more or less the same as other lantern rites. You meet in the story, you meet Lanyan, the new girl. I try to a demo stage, but demo stages I feel are basically useless because characters, 4-star characters in demo stages seem to be able to accomplish things that I've never managed to get a 4-star character to do ever without investing Ningguang levels of time in them. So yeah, but she seems like a basically an improved Sucrose, more or less. She's got less CC ability than Sucrose, but far more offensive ability and far more defensive ability. So Sucrose not dethroned yet because she can gather mobs and hold them in place and do more damage over time. But she's got nice animations. She's got a nice design. It's a bit busy as far as character designs go, but it's sort of in line more or less with their current style. You don't really get much of a sense of her personality though so far in the story. So I haven't decided whether or not I like her or whether I would invest in a great deal in her, since that's usually my metric for investing in characters is how much I like them, unless that like forced on me by the meta. But yeah, I've generally enjoyed Lantern Rite stories. I felt like the one from last year, I think it was, with Gar Ming, was actually a particularly well told story. Leagues ahead of what you find in most other games these days. But
Well, it had Mooncarver in it last year, and the crew, and
yes, it did. But like, as far as sort of like the sort of the father and son conflict story, which is just sort of a very low key, very personalized sort of story, I felt was just told really well compared to what I expected. I expected it to be much more perfunctory, but there was actually a lot of love put into it. So yeah, generally, I have high expectations of Lantern right now, which might be to its detriment. But yeah. Anyway, I also finished. I finished part 1.0 of the Honkai Impact Third story. Um, I enjoyed it generally, and I felt like it came to a good ending. I feel like if I had been playing Honkai Impact Third over a span of years and had been sort of like journeying alongside the characters all this time, I probably would have bawled my eyes out. It was still a good story, but the sort of the thing that gachas are able to exploit emotionally is to get their hooks into players over a long period of time and have them become just accustomed to having all of these imaginary people around due to visiting them every day in the gacha.
Oyo
And
games in particular, because events cannot be replayed until Star is in Genshin especially. Um, and event stories are gone forever in Genshin or limited to only a few select ones in Z Star Rail. It really makes coming in late to these games, I feel, pretty rough because a lot of the emotional impact for a bunch of these characters, in ZZZ's case, double especially, although I think they're just archiving all of their major events in that one, so it may not be as big, where are in these events. Like, it jumped out to me just how much you interact with every single faction and every single character you've like ever met in the ZZZ one for their big event this cycle. That's just not going to be as relevant to people that play these games late to the party versus those of us that have played them since they came out. Because in Genshin, I remember when we came back, there was a whole lot of maybe this was in an event though. Maybe that's why we're supposed to care about this. Or maybe we see more of them there. And Genshin doesn't have an archival feature like Star Rail is missed out on all that. So a lot of Genshin character building, unfortunately, winds up falling a little flat, and in some of its story moments, not hitting as hard as it could, because we just don't get to experience the events the characters spend a whole lot of time and dialogue enduring themselves to the player with.
Yeah, I was trying to work out how long the story was, so I visited the long derelict Honkai Impact 3rd wiki, which is really poorly maintained because generally speaking, like the game is a little bit older than the golden age of game wikis, and the community that plays it is pretty tight knit and mostly occupies Discord rather than being large enough to maintain a wiki, so it's a very incomplete wiki in a lot of ways. But I happened to glance at it to see, how big is the story? And then the section on events is enormous, and it's like none of these. A lot of these events are sort of like there to add sort of like daily life color to the lives of the characters, and I just never. Not only did I not experience that, but I never will because those events don't exist anymore. They're not archived. So yeah, I was missing that. But the thing, it was still a relatively impactful story that I felt ended well. And unlike most of the other Hoyo stories, it is intensely character focused around the three main ladies, being Kiana, Bronya, and May. And so you basically you're following the story from them as like semi carefree students in the Valkyrie Academy to the sort of world shattering goddesses that they become by the end of the story, having to sort of drag themselves bleeding over broken glass the entire way to get there, and then finally getting their hard earned victory at the very end. So that it's a sort of a sprawling scope of story that kind of puts me a little bit in mind of, and not necessarily, and I'm saying it's a direct parallel, but like the scope of time and space covered puts me in mind of the way you describe Cold Steel, for instance. And that it all starts off very narrowly focused on basically military academy students who go on the odd mission as part of their training at Saint Freya's Academy, and then by the end of it, they're deciding the fate of the world.
Saint Estrea's is the girls' school in the capital, but they do go there if it makes you feel better. They're Thor's military academy.
Well, I'm talking about Honkai anyway. I'm saying that in terms of the scope that they take something that is narrowly focused on a handful of individuals, although the size of the handful in Cold Steel seems to rapidly get out of hand. They manage to follow these characters along like three very divergent paths, though, because their lives to some extent revolve around each other, but for a lot of the story they just aren't anywhere near each other. But their constant thinking about the others is sort of what drives them to move forward in various ways. But yeah, it's a very anime storyline in a lot of ways. Like nobody has natural circumstances. Everything is a little bit wacky. I found the origin of the moniker Silverwolf is from Honkai Impact 3rd, and that was the moniker by which Bronya was listed on the most wanted list of assassins when she was a child soldier in Siberia before she was found by Kokolia. But yeah, so there's every one of the characters is a long story, and it would have been, I think there would have been an awful lot more impact if I'd been following it over a great deal of real world time rather than having it all sort of compressed into one run. It's one of those things that I feel like that the time that it takes to play the story has an effect on the way you perceive the story. So yeah, but I still enjoyed it, and I still found that it was a satisfying ending. I have 3 days to get caught up, which is not possible. So I'm just gonna have to forego that free S rank Valkyrie, I'm afraid. But since it's a game that's gonna get backburned anyway, and most of the S ranks on that particular S rank ticket are not really relevant, like they're about as relevant as getting a free 5-star from the general banner on Star Rail is in terms of meta. Um,
Hey, I'd take
I
another
can probably.
Himiko.
I'm not sure if there's a Himiko equivalent because I think the only one on that S rank ticket that is still used is Hersher of Sentience, and she's only used in a very limited manner. Um, that said, Hersher of Sentience, she's really obnoxious and annoying when you first meet her, but over the course of time, that being obnoxious and annoying kind of grows on you, and it's actually kind of endearing by the end, which I can't really explain, but that's the way it seems to me. But yeah, I'll end up foregoing that S rank, and I'll just press forward the story at a slightly reduced rate because when I realized that there was an interlude between, because all I need to do is complete the first part of the first chapter of the second part would be enough for me to get the rewards that I'm on the tier that I'm currently on. But then I realized that there's an interlude chapter that is really, really long, which deals with what all of the characters are doing in the meantime before the world is threatened again, type of thing. Which is in the meantime the world is being threatened a lot, but the sort of the scope is sort of uh part 1.5 of FGO in scope, so quite kind of chunky. So no way I'm going to be able to get through that in 3 days, so I just give up.
Yeah, like 4
And
or
it was
5
causing
10-hour
me to,
stories.
yeah, like it. Just I probably spent, I don't know, probably spent 16 or 20 hours just doing like the last 3 or 4 chapters of part one, and part one has, how many is it? I think it's like 38 chapters, something like that. It was a really long story, like really long, and I was skipping huge chunks of it as well. Like anything that seemed remotely unimportant, I just skipped. Like there is an interlude which is just all about Rita trying to find her way out of the Sea of Quanta, but it doesn't have much story associated with it. It's mostly just her wandering around. I skipped that. I unwisely skipped most of the Elysian realm, which means that I'm missing significant chunks of story concerning May's time in the Elysian realm, but most of it's not of critical importance. Everything that is of importance is sort of covered in Précis when that story joins back up with the main plot. But yeah, I have missed a certain amount of story, but I'm trying to get the outline of the way the universe works more than anything else to see how it intersects with the other Hoyo properties. So yeah, I'll probably backburner that whole project for a while. Because I'm falling way behind on the other ones that I'm playing in a more actively engaged fashion. So yeah, I need to get back on the Star Rail train and get caught up because I basically speed ran the main plot and only did that in Amphorius. And I actually kind of like the environment of Amphorius and want to spend more time just sort of tooling around in there and poking into the corners. But I just haven't had the time yet. And of course, I'm well behind on ZZZ's content as well, which
ZZ, I
means I
think you
have.
got a long time, except I think a couple of the events are short, but the big events you got like a
Well,
while.
I mean, when I scanned down the list, one of them only had 10 days on it. So
Yeah, but that one's not even all the way out yet. It's releasing one thing at a time and won't be all out till they're just quick. It's one quick little mini game that you just do some bits with some characters and a special web browser looking ass looking thing, and then do a mini game.
right. Well, at any rate, I haven't touched any of that. I haven't touched any of the Star Rail ones. I've got an awful lot of work to do to get Remembrance Trailblazer up to code.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to try Remembrance Trailblazer with the Herter to see how that works, but the Herter just seems to have this this kind of she's lumbered by her speed requirements, and her speed requirements are incredibly fluid because you can run her as a speed character if you want, but it's not really to your benefit to do so because her ultimate gives her promotes her to the top of the stack every time. So it makes more sense to just try and charge her ult faster. But then you've got to build a team around facilitating that. But if she's too slow, then you're still going to run into problems. Like there's most of the guides that I saw for the Herta are just like, you're going to have to just try her out and see whether your current build works for your speed. And if she doesn't work, move it up a bit or down a bit and then try again and see if it fits better.
Yeah, she's
Like that's
probably
basically how you've got to do Herta.
probably just if you can get to the first speed breakpoint, great. If not,
There are no breakpoints for the Herta.
I guess because she
Unless you
screws
are
with the turn
unless
order.
you're going out of your way to use a particular set of relics that have a speed break point, she does not have speed break points. End of story. She has as much or as little speed as you want her to do. She has no speed on her traces at all, I don't think, because she relies entirely on team order manipulation in order to move around the move order. But you can play her as speed because she hits really hard, and hitting more often is better than hitting less often. So there are speed builds for her, but arguably, if you can come up with a coherent way of charging her ult externally, it would be better. I'm still really weighing up, do I want to pull for Jade? Because Jade is such a good teammate for her. Because Jade gives her the extra external speed she needs to make speed like just totally non-issue. When you've got Jade, you don't need to worry about her to speed level nearly as much because Jade will supply the extra to put her in the reasonably speedy category, even if you've abandoned speed entirely.
Yeah,
And the number of hits Jade gets is really beneficial for charging her to as well. But the thing is, Jade's an old character for an archetype that I haven't gone full all in on, and is that really a good idea? There could be a better partner come down the road, maybe even after not too long of a time, since a Herta team with Jade works really, really well. But in terms of Jade's personal mechanics as a follow-up character, there's basically no benefit for Jade in that arrangement. She
I
just
mean,
happens to benefit her immensely.
she does get the reason that I always grab a Herta for Jade, even if your Herta was terrible and not built at all, I would still grab a Herta because Herta charges Jade's follow up attack so fast because Jade doesn't care about other follow up synergy, only cares about her partner's ability to hit multiple targets.
Well, Herta also imparts a great deal of crit damage, I believe.
Yeah,
But
and so she.
but yeah, I mean, it's all a question of how important is it to Jade that Jade is a follow-up character. That's really the question, because the follow-up mechanic is basically abandoned as anything other than a source of additional hits in the Herta team.
Yeah, the thing with Jade's follow up mechanic is while it will receive synergies from Numby, if Numby is on the target, you're not using Jade on the Numby team unless circumstances are really wacky. And she would provide follow up benefits if she had a target for her stuff, but she receives benefits from an erudition character more than anything else. She doesn't really care about synergizing with follow up. She can and she does in the wacky scenarios that Apoc Shadow can sometimes throw at you, or Memory of Chaos. But those are special circumstances. In general, she prefers to be with other erudition characters because she wants to partner with an erudition buddy because she cares about the number of targets hit by the other character per attack. That's what's going to make her do her follow up and get more juice and damage out of her. And if you stick the if you're using her with the Herta, just stick the Ashduke set on her and on Jade.
That's the other thing about I'd have to build another character if I decided to pull for Jade and another unplanned character build process. Ugh. But yeah, there's always the big question of, oh well, is there another character coming down the line who's a better fit? Because Jade was definitely not built with Herta in mind, but definitely works extremely well with Herta. So yeah, it's definitely a live option. I have zero attachment to Jade as a character, but she's definitely a really great fit for Herta.
Yeah, I got her for the mechanical follow-up team just to have a premium team completed option. But yeah, it's almost like she was tailor built for the Herta. It's so ridiculous they're sitting together because every time Herta, she gives Herta speed that Herta doesn't have, so Herta gets more turns. Herta is an erudition character that attacks multiple enemies multiple times. Sometimes Jade needs 8 enemies to be hit to do her follow-up attack, so she's going to get follow-up all the time with the Herta and get free bonus damage. And this is going to charge her ult as well. And then at the same time, Jade's going to get so many ults and skills and talents off that Herta's going to get her erudition number, her little 90 stacks up to 99 number, jacked through the roof immediately. So they're just going to bounce off each other like Fei Xiao and Adventurine or Fei Xiao and Numbi. Like they just work so good together.
Yeah, because I'm really interested in trying out something like the Stain plus the Herta plus Jade plus say Tribby when Tribby comes out,
I
because
wish.
Tribby has the same basic attack style that Jade does, where your basic hits 3 targets.
Yeah.
And so if Tribby's also contributing to charging, is also potential contributor to charging Jade's stacks depending on the way Tribby works out, since Tribby will follow up based off multiple characters. It might even hit more often than the Herta as far as charging Jade is concerned. It's hard to tell since we don't have any final stats for her. But there's also other characters, and sort of there's a rumor that there's a new character coming out who summons sort of like dummy targets on the opposite side of the field.
Erudition characters even more.
Even more targets to hit. Yeah. It's totally at the level of rumor though. Like there's not anything concrete about it, as far as I'm aware.
I have been tempted because the Jade and Fei Xiao pulls went so good. I'm not, because I need to save for Aglaya, because I'm gonna try and go all in on Remembrances of Pseudo Archetype. But man, the erudition heavy focus this cycle and is just made me go, I really, really am tempted to pull. Even though I really don't, I'm not attached to her as a character, because it would be so mechanically beneficial to have another erudition character other than the one.
Well, the thing with erudition, like erudition has been in vogue before, but the erudition cycle tends to last a much shorter time than the other ones, because basically it's just one thing that characterizes erudition as a format is lots of targets, and any time that is not the case, it essentially becomes useless. Like
Yeah.
the Herta may be like ultra powerful right now, and she's powerful in lots of contexts simply because her raw numbers are very good. So even when she's not in her optimal situation, she's still very solid. But if you look at previous erudition characters, Jingyuan, Himiko, Mini Herta, those guys, outside of pure fiction, they've basically been a total non-event. They
Well,
might as well not exist in the rest of the game because there's no context for them. And since pure fiction provides that permanent context, your threshold for multi-hit characters ends up basically being, can I clear pure fiction or can I not? Because whether or not you can actually leverage those characters in other game modes sort of like changes on the regular. Like I've had Rappa for a while now, and she has applications, but anytime that the framing of the situation doesn't perfectly suit her, she falls off unbelievably quickly. Like
there's
in her element, she's crazy powerful. Outside of her element, she's not merely meh, she's actually bad.
there is part of it is they have set up the current in-game cycle where all 3 game modes are erudition favored right now. Heavily erudition favored, in fact, with the
I
trotters.
suppose they feel that they can do that because favoring erudition is not like that's not the same thing as as favoring follow-up, because follow-up is sort of like an archetype that occurs in ones and twos throughout multiple different paths, as opposed to erudition, which is like an entire class of characters that they know everybody's got some of.
Yeah. Well, the problem is, uh, because of previous cycles, I did not invest in my Himiko or Herta very much, and just got them up to online, not good or even workable. Maybe Herta's. So
Well,
I've been up
Himiko was my starter 5-star, so she's been built from the word go.
so I've been up a creek until I pulled Jade and got her built.
Himiko carried me through the beginning of the game. And that was when I was all molding about her because she had the worst. She had the worst ratings amongst all the characters in the starter banner. Like people rated Bailu above her, people rated Yanqing above her because she had no application back then. But I was like, well, you got to go to war with the army you've got. And so I built her to the 9s, and it paid off in the end.
Yeah, I picked her on the pick tick we got before.
I haven't even spent my pick tick yet. I really should do that.
Yeah, people that are saying Aglaya's going to go on there, I'm just like,
It's not, because when they defined the ticket, they listed the characters that were eligible. It's not going to change.
yeah,
I just haven't done it because I've got decision paralysis. But
get another Himiko.
yeah, I'll probably get another Himiko. Get her to E1.
Like, what's Jeopard going to do for you? Get 3 more levels and skills you don't use?
Oh, Jeopard. Well, the thing is, Jeopard's my only shielder, other than March 7th, who is a lock on Imaginary Hunt March 7th because she's a key figure in my Feixiao team.
She's the ghetto Numby.
I think she's actually very good. I think that all you Numby have is underrate poor March. I think she does a great job.
Numby has been done dirty this past patch in multiple ways. I just am gotta support my boy.
I don't know if he's a boy.
He's a Numby. Numby is a Numby.
Yeah, I got good mileage out of March, and I really haven't felt much of a deficit using March instead of
No,
Numby.
It's like a 15% tops. Not.
It's definitely not as premium as when I borrow a Numby and sub it instead of March, but March works really well, and that having that special ability to inherit her partner's element, so that basically she hits 2 different elements in a lot of cases, has been really, really beneficial as well.
Talk about premium differences, though. The difference between our boy Ratio and Feixiao is like night and day in damage, though.
I'll have to take your word for it, because I built Ratio, but I never actually used him after about when my level cap was 60, I think, something like that.
I used him quite a bit for a long, long time until I pulled Feixiao just now. He stole all of his gear and was doing almost twice the damage.
The Ratio was replaced directly by Acheron, and I'm here to tell you that was night and day.
I mean, Ratio will get you there. He's not the smoothest ride.
He did work at a time that I really needed him to do work, because when I was using Ratio was during Crown of Mundane and Divine, where there were freaking bugs everywhere, and I had no damage. Like my main damage dealer was Xueyi, and I had no idea how to build her, because she's like the monk in D&D 3.5, where you need so many different stats that you really can't get great performance out of her, because you're going to have to give up something in order to maximize the damage somewhere else, no matter how you build her. And so while she's good, she serves too many masters. But she was basically my main damage dealer. She was who I was leaning on throughout that period of the time.
I was using Mahjong then.
Yeah, that basically only worked if you had Sparkle. If you had no Sparkle, then you could not use her in any meaningful way.
I mean, you could try. You could get incredibly lucky.
I mean, it could happen. It's not technically impossible, but I didn't have Hanya either. If I had Hanya, I probably would have been using Shinsei, but I didn't have Hanya, so I think generally speaking, the stable of 4 stars in Star Rail are underrated. Like they have a lot of interesting mechanics and they do interesting things and they work really well when you build them correctly and put them together. It's just that the perfect premium teams work so well that it makes the 4 stars look crap by comparison, when individually they're all designed quite well. I think that they just basically need to slow their roll on the power gap there. Like it's fine to have the odd headliner character like the Archons in Genshin, but you don't need every character to be that.
Yeah, yeah. What's her name? New
I
girl,
don't know.
blonde girl from Amphorius. Laya
Aglaya.
gonna come out and do like 4 times the damage of Acheron.
I mean,
Watch.
from what I've heard, she does, yeah, from closed beta. But all of the demonstration stuff in closed beta has been in a MOC test cycle that gives her an enormous buff, like even bigger than the one currently in Apox Shadow for Erudition. But yeah, from all accounts, she is incredibly cracked simply because they didn't think hard enough about what it means to scale with speed. It's like speed doesn't. It's not like when if you scale, if your damage scales with speed, it's not like you lose the fact that you also take turns all the time.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't think hard enough about that, I don't think. But yeah, I'm still I'm still sort of up in the air on whether or not I want to pull for her. I kind of just want to save for Castoris because she's such a darling.
I
She's
like.
such a soggy wet cat. Just looks sad all the time.
She was the only character that endeared herself to me in the story. Aglaya had a moment that she did, and I'm mostly pulling her because I decided to go all in. Tribby, I would like to pull for, but I'll have to see what the Primo economy's like.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident that since I've gone in on the Herta, that Tribby is going to be the best support for her because she's basically the only Harmony character that can lay down heaps of hits on target because she's designed to do that. Like she's basically a number of hits generator as far as Harmony characters go. She's basically she's got a similar design to Ruan Mei, except that her rather than increasing toughness, she just puts heaps of hits on enemy targets, which is exactly what the Herta wants, basically to stack those interpretation stacks everywhere.
Maybe this is why they
And of
had to
course,
keep nerfing Numby. Why they had to take away his premium treasure finding ability, because he's going to be able to buff Tribby through the roof.
I don't know, man. I don't know. But yeah. Speaking of treasure finding, that's actually been a helpful side effect of the Herta. Her ability to she's got a treasure finding ability as well, much like Numby, except she doesn't run off after them. But she can mark random treasure chests on the map. Which can be a bit annoying if she marks one that's one place and you run all the way over there, and then the next time you use it, it's like, well, there was one right next to where I was standing before. Why did you make me run over here? But yeah, it's still been useful. But yeah, so I don't know. Like, Aglaya projects an awful lot of power. Like she's just got the character as well designed as having an aura of power about her, generally speaking. But you just don't get a good feel for her in the story uses of her because the trash just folds like a cheap suit. So you don't really get a sense for how much power does that even represent. I don't know. But yeah, I'm fairly sure Castoris is going to be Remembrance. Everything seems to be indicating that way. And, sopping wet cat energy. It's hard not to be endeared to her. Like, she's definitely was written from the ground up to be the Moe character in the cast. But yeah. So there's also, a variety of other characters. Like Cypher will be coming out shortly, I'm sure, who has a lot of fans in Honkai Impact 3rd because her alternate Pardo Phyllis is popular. There's like This seems to be like the husbando chapter of the story, though, because there's so many male characters coming down the pipe.
Yeah, I'm gonna save a lot of primos.
Yeah. But I'm just sort of crossing my fingers that HP manipulation won't become the dominant archetype the way it did in Fontaine, because the leading lad for that is going to be My Day. So don't really want that. But I'm sure that there's going to be like a relic set and a harmony character in that are all going to be based on health manipulation. So it's definitely going to be one of the premium teams. I'm really hoping that they, rather than always just trying to push latest and greatest, will continue to maintain the older teams in the way that Hoyo has over time tried to cycle between different elemental reactions. Like, they didn't forget Bloom existed. They did release Nailu. They've given Hyper Bloom its day in the sun, but there's no indication they're just going to abandon it. It's not like they're going to stop creating Dendro characters. They just moved to Burgeon and Burning for a while.
Well, yeah, Burgeon and Burning was effectively
And
abandoned immediately and needed some help desperately. So it finally got its band-aid with Emily.
well, they've got a lot on their plate. The important thing is they don't forget about anything. Like, we're back to Melt and Vape again in terms of Sitlali's effect on them. And she's made Melt and Vape premium again.
And Mavwika's made Ford Face and Pyro drivers. Well, Arlecchino kind of already did that. Pop out again.
Arlecchino's sort of like a health manipulator, though. You've got to build around that as well. Because if things go... And also, I've never liked her. Like, trying to play Arlecchino, every time her trial comes up and I tool around in it, it's like, ugh, this just feels weird. I keep feel like I'm hitting a roadblock. I don't know if I'm just playing her wrong. Like, her numbers are bonkers, but you keep seeming to have these famine periods, and they don't feel as natural as, say, Clorin's famine periods feel natural, because she's supposed to do a gajillion hits in a short burst and then rest for a bit. Whereas Arlecchino is like, gives the feel of a momentum character who's supposed to snowball, and then she just hits a wall and everything stops.
It's because you're supposed to weave in charge attacks at specific times to pop her stuff.
Yeah, but anytime
And
you don't, like, if you pop her skill on trash and then the trash dies, then what are you supposed to do?
Well, then
Because it's gonna be ages till that skill comes back.
Then you're stuffed
So
because it relies on the enemies getting marked.
Anytime you're fighting trash, she can kill one burst of trash and then immediately it becomes useless for like 15 seconds or something. It's really frustrating. She'll vaporize that trash, definitely. I mean, I don't mean that in the game mechanic terms. I mean, she'll kill it really fast.
I mean, she could vaporize it.
But then, well, I mean, if you wanted, yeah, if you've got, Xi Jinping on your team. But you've got me calling him that now. It just doesn't feel very smooth as an experience. It's sort of like the opposite of Mavwika's issue, in which I feel like her damage loop is too noisy. There's too many things to do, and everything that you do has a whole bunch of effects, like a lot of effects. Even her regular animations are too loud and large. But yeah. Anyway, the point is that they have been doing a tour of things that are not working well and updating them periodically. Like, despite being the red-headed stepchild of reactions, well, perhaps not the red-headed stepchild, the red-headed stepchild, which is not actually like the reject Giga, but the Giga everybody likes of reactions overload. Even they did something with that in Fontaine and made an entire archetype based around a 4-star character who nobody can get because she's always on the wrong banner.
Well, I mean, she's on a banner that's insanely popular with most people, just not us, because we have other characters we want to pull for.
Isn't she up again?
Is she on this banner? She might be up on this banner.
But yeah, so they released Chevrus, who's basically a character who creates a new archetype, and quite a serviceable one. It's not a premium one, but I've seen a lot of people use it to great effect, especially in like stages in Spiral Abyss where a lot of control is important in order to maintain a good time. Because normally Overload is a pain because it knocks things away, but there are certain times where you just want to keep things knocked down, especially Netland enemies that surf around a lot. You know, the ones that basically get on their own Sharky and they just
Oh,
keep
yeah, the people, the springs assholes.
because they're going to leave you in the dust while you run after them, and it's much more effective to just knock them over than it is to run after them. So Overload suddenly becomes valuable.
You want to know the
So
worst
yeah,
feeling in the world with those enemies? Chasing them on your own Sharky when their Sharky is faster.
no, come back.
It
What is
is,
wrong with my shark?
it
My
is,
inferior shark.
it is the worst thing in the world. Like, I'll have Pyro applied to him, ready for the big Sharky bite. I just need to tag him a few times. And these motherfuckers surfing away.
Yeah, so it's the solution to that problem has turned out to be Hyperbloom because you can't outsurf the lanterns. Um, but yeah, I like that they have not forgotten any archetypes. Like they just need to sort out the superconduct problem, and then we'll be fine. Whether or not they do that by actually leaning into physical damage, or whether they use the AoE component of superconduct, because superconduct is also like the AoE cryo reaction, because it spreads a cloud of cryo damage at the same time as causing the physical weakness. Like realistically, you kind of want to do both. I mean, they are rerunning Writhsley, aren't they? But yeah, I like that they maintain those, and I'm just hoping that the Star Rail team can get that in their head as well. That's like Super Break won't become the Penacony team and then just cease to exist after that, and Dot won't be like the Shansho Lofu team and then cease to exist after that.
Well, yeah, Dot
That, that,
never.
that
Yeah, they didn't even finish Dot. They got
yeah, they didn't.
halfway there and stopped.
They made Kafka and they made Black Swan, and then they forgot what they were doing and moved on to something else. But yeah, I think that's because they had design problems that were at that stage intractable, because dot damage doesn't scale, it doesn't break, it doesn't crit, and it doesn't scale with speed. So there's no way to improve it.
You need a way to trigger it off cycle, and you need a way to get more value out of it per pop.
So yeah, it was definitely like they haven't forgotten about it. If they had, then they wouldn't keep adding it to the bonuses you can pick for in-game content, and they wouldn't have added a bunch of consumables to buff their damage to Amphorius. Like really hefty buffs.
I mean, they might not have forgotten about it, but maybe we're still zillions of years away from.
Well, there's a rumor floating around that there's a character in one of the Amphorius flame chasers. I think it might be a penis haver. Not really sure. Has basically has effect hit rate scaling skills, which is usually a calling card of Dot. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Like, I don't know. I don't really fancy pulling Jiachu either. Like, I don't know if they would lean into Jiachu as being a Dot character or Jiachu as being an Acheron support. Sort of hard to say. Anyway, I won't say much more than that. I still haven't logged into Final Fantasy XIV in months. My house is probably demolished if the demolition is running right now.
I should probably open that game up so that we can keep the guild house.
I'm just so disgusted by that game right now. It's not beyond repair. They could win me back, but they actually have to try to do that, not just act like there was never any problem.
Yeah, they've got a lot of that current tier of game design that they need to
The thing is, even if I take a hiatus for a whole expansion till the next one, I'm still gonna have to see Wook Lamart again in order to get to the next expansion.
There is the skip story button.
It's true. I'm sort of allergic to those, but I'm also allergic to more Wook Lamart.
Like, pick your poison. Do you want to be a story skipper, or do you want to be a Wook Lamart viewer?
Can't they just like seal her in a crystal? That sort of thing happens all the time in Final
I,
Fantasy.
I am waiting for the farms thread to inform me that she has been firmly leased in her palace.
Can't it be like the Lassie in Final Fantasy, whatever number that one was,
13 with
13,
the command
where
crystal.
they finish their job and they just turn to crystal, and then we don't have to hear from them ever again.
Yeah, well, I don't think we've heard from Lise ever again after we stuck her in the palace.
Like, I mean, I think that people should probably apologize to Lise after Work Lamont.
Like, Lise was underwhelming as a character. She wasn't offensive.
Well, people didn't worship the ground she walked on. She had to deal with a lot of the same sorts of problems that Work Lamont did, like being a foreigner in her own country. She's like, the daughter of, wasn't she daughter of a famous general from Alamigo or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Very prominent individual. It's her homeland. She's trying to rally them to her cause because she wants to be in charge so she can lead them to freedom, etc., etc. And nothing goes the way it's planned in what was until recently held as the worst story in Final Fantasy XIV history. Um, I don't think it's all that bad by comparison.
I still use
Like
Lisa's hair in Final Fantasy. I
they
bought her
like
hair in the cat shop.
when she ran into common Alamegans, they basically told her where to get off. And functionally, she had to go and study under the leader of another nation in order to learn how to do leading. That was
Well,
pretty much what she had to do.
she also has the advantage of Alamigo and Doma to an extent. While they may have some roots in some other cultures around the real world and their inspirations came from, they weren't just plonking South America and renaming crap. And in the most superficial, generic elements of South America at that, with no substance whatsoever for her culture she was working with.
Well, you don't like Wachimeki Meki?
Wachimeki is the only thing I like about the South American conventions. I I had this discussion with people on the farms thread, and was talking about how hard must it be for the Japanese people to say the names of the crap in this expansion. There are more
I don't
L's and
know.
R's all over the place than you can shake a stick at.
I guess I don't know what sort of names they get and how much of it was the English localization team garnishing the names with things that they felt were appropriate.
I hope Koji Fox comes back and is aghast at what he sees he left the people to do while he was working on 16. It's not going to happen. I guarantee you Koji Fox is just as in the tank for all this garbage as the current. But at least he
I
cared.
don't, even if he isn't, I don't think he's got the will to go against the grain.
But yeah, like at least he cared about the products. Like he may be a Californian, but he still cared.
I think it all depends on basically on Yoshi P personally to just lay down the laws. Like, look, you people, you screwed everything up. You did everything as badly as it possibly could have been done. What have we had that was good? You made sure that it wasn't. You need to pull your heads in. We're going to fire half the team as an example to the other half, and
His
everybody else is on notice.
his public statements are not encouraging.
No, I don't think he understands. I don't think he understands at all.
Yeah, I don't think East in general and Japan understands just how divisive that stuff has become in the West and how much people are through with it.
They've also got the firewall of fake positivity in the way.
Yeah, if and
Where like any of the negative sentiment is being prevented from reaching them
the Final
from the
Fantasy,
Western side.
yeah, the Final Fantasy community aggregates most of their community help stuff on Reddit of all things, which is currently the Final Fantasy community. There is, I saw a discussion pop up about whether they should ban Twitter leaks because Elon's a Nazi.
Well, I mean, Reddit is the most paused place on the internet. Like the last I checked, the only board on Reddit that wasn't outrageously paused was the Blue Archive one.
And that's because they're too scared to go there. Yeah, 14's a mess. All right.
Hence why I haven't logged into it at all.
Yeah, I'll maintain the house. I am keeping my sub up until the next Baja comes up. That's your first opportunity to save it. You can save me with the gameplay. I don't know if they can fix the story. They I hear conflicting reports about how far they plan and write this stuff in advance and when they can start doing pivots. So okay, I'll let you try and save it with the gameplay with the next exploration zone, and if it's hot garbage, that's it.
I mean, speaking of pivots, I did hear that Ubi did pivot on the new Assassin's Creed.
I've heard rumors
To
that
the
Yasuke is out.
Yeah, I heard that they just deleted him. Like, he's just removed. Like, he's not a playable character anymore. He just doesn't figure. How much money must a decision like that cost if they really did that? Because
And
they've got all of this marketing, all of this merch, all of the code, all of the textures, the designs, the writing, the voice work, all in the name of diversity.
it just
But
costs.
everything else they did has been a faux pas as well, though, right? Like the half Tory Gate thing, remember?
Oh, I remember seeing a headline about that. I don't think I read it though.
Well, basically, there is one half Tory Gate standing in Japan and they used this half Tory Gate as a sort of like a background piece in a piece of merch they did in a figure that was going with the collector's edition or whatever. But that half Tory Gate, it exists because it survived an atomic bomb and has sort of been emblematic of the atomic bomb drops in Japan. So when you incorporate that as a sort of as a whimsical background item, it basically looks to the Japanese audience like you're poking fun at them for having been hit by an atomic bomb.
Yeah,
Which is about as bad of a PR coup as you could possibly accomplish.
it probably could have gotten written off as Westerners being Westerners if they hadn't made all the other mistakes beforehand.
Well, I mean, if the entire context of it wasn't framing and replacing Japanese culture with, some farcical black culture.
Yeah.
But there were a number of other things like that as well that they did. Like, that's just one example. Everything that they've done in this project so far has been a faux pas. It's dead in the water. They probably should have just cancelled it and wrote it off as a tax rebate. That would have been a better move, business-wise.
Yeah,
Do what they did with Concord.
it would have been better to just axe this whole thing at this point. It's not going to sell. Nobody. All you're going to do is attract negative PR. Your shareholders are already coming for your throats. Like, just it would have been better to take their L on this one and say we need to radically adjust our direction going forward, away from this nonsense. Otherwise, we're just going to be burned. That would have been the smart move, but that is not what they did.
Yeah, I don't feel like the hostility is ramped up high enough yet. I think we need more hostility.
Best cabin, best Starcom. All right. You got anything else for your week?
I'll leave it there.
I've got a goodly bit I can jump through from because I don't really need to focus for part of it since things. We can do some Trout's Domain. At least do Dragon and Daddy.
Alrighty.
Is it bad that in Genshin, a non-insignificant amount of my polling decision is made on how fun is this character to run around the world in while we're doing the show?
Well, that's why people pull characters for Genshin. Like, that's the big advantage that it has over the other ones, is that you can just spend more time with that character. It's sort of almost mathematically able to present it
Oh,
as far as
I mean
getting people to invest goes.
specifically during the show where we're literally not doing anything.
Well, yeah, but that's how most people play Genshin. You got to remember, most of these people are not gamers. They started playing during COVID.
So yeah, all right. So we'll continue with the Hoyo talk. I have Genshin has got the back burner this week because ZZZ has had a massive number of events and story content. Like what the heck?
I don't remember this. I don't even know how to deal with this.
He fell over.
Have I seen that before?
I don't think I've seen that before. Don't just throw ice at him and do donuts. So that was surprising. Pretty much ran thought off. So Genshin has been backburnered because there's just so much to do in ZZZ right now that I have not had the got him. Wheel just barely clipped him.
That name, who is that?
Oh, I have already pulled up the menu. I missed it, and I have the sound off because we're doing the show.
Ochanina. I don't remember this character
I don't know him either.
that was talking in the background. This is the problem.
Who are you?
Wikipedia, tell me. Koshanina, also known by her Goetic name Harborum, bearing the ancient name Kiongozi, was a former god of war and pyro archon of Natlan.
Great. Why do we care about this character? Were they mentioned in a
He
book
was the
somewhere?
surfing champion of the people of the Springs.
Yeah, that's why Mualani might care about that character, but why do we care about that character?
I don't know. It doesn't seem like she actually played any real role. She's just randomly name dropped there for some reason.
I mean, Mualani might have a poster of her in her bedroom, but we don't know who this character is. Oh, not you. So yeah, ZZZ has the Raidu Got Boo event going on right now, which is Cheesetopia tier in scope. In fact, it might be bigger. Simple rhythm mini game. Not even a rhythm mini game. That's totally an incorrect description. Let me back that up. A simple Simon Says mini game. And Fall Guys Bang Boo edition, which you're guaranteed 100 points even if you come in last place and need 20,200 to get all the rewards. And you get a daily bonus for the first one you do every day. So fairly easy to clear through. The other one, as I mentioned before, is a glorified web event built into the game itself, but has very nice rewards for it and pops up a notification. So that's been there, and the new story that I can't talk about yet because Vol hasn't done it. The event is so big with so much text in it, though, that it's going to eat a good chunk of free time if you want to read it all, and some of it's quite good. So I do encourage that. Star Rail, the event is incredibly minor and takes basically no time to do.
You're gonna hang around an awful long for that because it had like 4
unless
weeks.
yeah, unless it's a different event that I just accidentally made the exclamation point go away from that I'm just brain farting on. The little puzzle event took no time at all. Need her to get down. Phase 1 Daddy is a bit of a mess.
Donkey. It always seems to take so much longer.
On damage per screenshot. Yeah, that's a damage per screenshot. That was 600,000.
What did this see?
I had everything juiced up at max for that Sharky ultimate. Hey, a Dream Solvent. No feather.
Hey, I got a Dream Solvent too. I did get a feather.
I think we need something else for Sitlali, though. Feathers are for Casca.
I don't need anything for Sitlali. Sitlali's at 10, 10, 10. Every skill has been completed and crowned.
Let's see. To Doggo.
It's always Doggo in the end.
Yep. So yeah, that's where my time in the gachas has gone this week. The only thing of note aside from the events has been the new mail.
I still have I've still got to do the Blue Archive summer event, Blue Archive new main story. Like, I feel like I'm drowning in content right now. Like, I'm pretty sure I'm just going to miss the Honkai Impact 3rd New Year's event simply because I don't have the time to do it.
Yeah, it's probably a blessing that you can't get that S rank because now you will be more incentivized to actually back burner the game because you just got too many going on. I'm just gonna. So yeah, for actual content that's ongoing, two things of note for the weekly rotations that happen. This Apoc Shadow was a nightmare. Try and noodle my way through and took over 3 hours for me to figure out a way to get it done.
Is it just that erudition coded?
It's that erudition coded, and the only team I had for one of the teams was the pure follow-up attack team. And because this event is so heavily erudition coded, this meant relying on Numby RNG for that fight and many restarts. I love Numby. Numby has made life so much easier for me since I got him. But man, sometimes that trotter don't go where you want him to go. And sometimes, because Wopo had to go on that team, because the Swarm would just kill the other team if I didn't put Adventuring on it. Sometimes the wheels would just fall off. Like, I sent Vol a screenshot of the perfect start where Numby was on all the right targets. Everybody had good energy and skill points going into phase 2. Everything looked golden, and the wheels fell off immediately. And I sent him the follow-up screenshot, like, nope, wheels fell off. So I had to go fishing for another Numby RNG fight like that, and eventually got one and was able to get it and get 1 star short of max, which is pretty good considering my roster is not at all set for this Apoc Shadow at all. But it took a lot of trial and error and a whole lot of just molding over RNG and not a whole lot of skilled gameplay or decision making, because the only option I had was just hope for better luck. But we got there in the end. It was painful, but it worked. This Deadly Assault came out as well this week. Well, Apoc Shadow I think was actually last week, but I didn't do it. Might be this week. I don't remember. I don't know when everything. But I posted my breakdown of the bosses for this Deadly Assault in the mobile channel like I did last time, and this one they must have really realized that one of those bosses being brand new, which is a nice selling point of it. I mean, if they're willing to just like, well, we designed this thing and we don't have anywhere to use it, so we're going to plonk it here. That's cool. The other 2 bosses are the standard bosses that we've seen before. We have Pompeii and the Gray Swambo combo bot. Both of them give you.
Is it full Pompey or is it the weird 1-stage Pompey?
It's the weird 1-stage Pompey.
Right, the one that can't hit. I guess he must be blind or something.
Yeah, it's that Pompey, and it's the Gray Swambo combo bot that gets impaired if you break its leg. Those 2 are the same fights that we've done before. Their bonus points and bonus conditions are exactly the same as they always are, with Pompey being just do react or do any kind of anomaly to it. Don't even have to disorder it. Just pop him with anomalies to get a damage buff. So Bernice go Burr. You can choose to use Miyabi on the gray spot if you want. It will probably work out okay. I think it might even be weak to ice. I think it might be ice elect weak.
It's
But
a weird combo.
yeah, no, it's elect ether weak. It has no resistance. Yeah, the only resistance this week is Pompey is elect resist.
Realistically, I don't think they should put resistances on these. People don't have large enough rosters for that crap. Stop adding more constraints. You already added too many.
Well, this is considerably less than the last few cycles. There's only one resistance amongst all the bosses, and it's only on one of them.
You still need a minimum of 3 anomaly characters built.
Yeah. So,
which is an outrageous requirement for most people.
So the new boss is a upgraded version of Butcher that I do not remember ever seeing before. Maybe I'm just having a colossal brain fart, but I think he's brand new. So we've got a brand new Dead End Butcher, the notorious Dead End Butcher. That, not to be confused with the Dead End Butcher you fight as a notorious hunt. Up in your naming convention there, guys. Where the bonus condition for the fight is to trigger a disorder on the boss. This will remove a flat days reduction and damage reduction that he has for 30 seconds for every disorder triggered. But thankfully, he does not have much base anomaly resist, so you can get it done with only one anomaly character. In fact, I did. As long as that anomaly character's name is Miyabi. Now, he took the most the other two are free for my account. I've done the gray spot plenty of times. I know how to take care of it. I didn't even use the bonus on it and just host it with as much damage as I could. I don't like the gray spot fight. It's probably the one boss fight I just really don't enjoy doing. Something about that fight feels off to me every time I do it. That and the original Ballerina Twins are the only two bad bosses I think are in the game. The other ones, I can find some merit in all of them at least, but those two, I just don't really care.
Ballerina Twins has become the with your judgment nut boss to me.
Yeah, and Asta needs them. Or Astra needs them.
I think I'm only missing like 2 more or something for Astra.
Yeah. So, I did spend a good chunk of my my energy this week getting Astra's core skill built up. So yeah, the new Dead End Butcher. The bonus point condition is different from the normal condition, which is or the bonus damage condition this time, and it is just do perfect dodges. And in a way, I want to give them credit for this. The reason I want to give them credit for this is if you're going to introduce a brand new boss and you want the players to engage with its moveset and really learn it and have fun figuring it out, making that boss have the dodge condition is a good idea. Because it forces you to learn its attack patterns. And this boss's whole gimmick is a bunch of its attacks are telegraphed but not flashed. So you really have to sit down and learn it. You're doing this Dark Souls style of you're going in there raw and you're going to get creamed by this guy until you figure him out. And I really enjoy that type of fight. So if that's what you are looking for in a boss fight and you like the learning process, he's going to be great. He's going to be a ton of fun. The amount of characters you can take to bop him, he's weak to Ether Ice like all Ethereals are. So your main damage dealer will probably be Miyabi if you're going for a serious attempt at the 3-star on this one. But that said, he is the hardest of the bosses this week. And if you are just trying to maximize your rewards, probably use your Miyabi on Gray Spot instead. Just because Miyabi will straight overpower that boss. And it does not matter that it's not weak to ice.
If I can straight overpower a boss, I usually want to put a weaker team on it, because that way I'm at least going to be able to salvage a couple of stars off of it.
Yeah.
Because I need in order to be able to clear the hard one at all, I need my nastiest damage dealer on it.
So There are no real tips and tricks. There's a couple of baby ones I can give you to be on the lookout for, but Dead and Butcher Notorious is going to be a trial and error fight. He's going to whack you across the field. You're going to say, "Oh, that was BS," and then next time you won't get hit by it. He's one of those fights. He's a lot of fun to learn if you enjoy the process. But
As
all I
long as
can
he's not an asshole like Elden Ring bosses that can change what they want to do halfway through.
he does not have any mix-ups, but he does have delays, long
I haven't
delays.
forgiven Margaret at all.
He has long delays on unflashed moves that seem to have different durations where it's hold until the start of the swing. But it is pretty forgiving on the come down of the swing for the dodge timing. So you're okay there as long as you know what to look for. Incorporating that into your cycle while doing damage is where the challenge comes in. When he goes,
I'm losing my connection to Discord.
I can hear you roboting.
I'm losing my connection.
Hold.
It's not coming back.
Okay, are we?
There we go. Yeah, all good now.
Gotta boop it to another region.
It really does seem to be just their servers decide that they're not going to play ball at rand.
Yeah, it lasts for like a minute and a half to like 5 minutes. They're suddenly fine again. But we'll just flip through to another server region and be. So, the first tip I can give you is anytime he goes invisible, his attacks coming out of invisibility are flashed with the audio cue. So you can get your free dodges and dodge points from that, so learn to abuse that. The second is don't get baited by the Kurokuru move. He has a twirly move that hits multiple times. So many times, in fact, that you cannot dodge all of them with the character. Not even a Passion Mode Jane can dodge all of them. Do not.
Well, what is the thing that varies between Kurokuru moves is how many frames actually deal damage, because there are some, like, you will constantly be taking ticks of damage from a spinny ballerina twin as long as you're close to them. Like, your screen will just cloud up with numbers, but other ones they'll be like tick 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 at a slower pace. Like, it varies depending on which type.
It is not the functionally perma-active circle of the Kurokuru move that the ballerina twins have, but it is a very, very fast one with just enough time for your character to be register a new separate hit for every spin. So you can get baited into thinking you can chain dodge it. It is something like bop 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 at that pace. Is how fast he spins.
So if you're at the edge of the perimeter, you can dodge the first one to get away, but you can't just stay in there dodging.
Yeah, his windup for this move is no joke, about 5 to 10 seconds. So you've got time if you're about to freeze him to just interrupt him.
The point is to sucker you into being right next to him.
Yeah, it baits you with that's a lot of free dodge points I could get if I could dodge. You can't. Don't try it. I tried it with Passion Mode Jane and it didn't work. Jane got moved to the Pompey team. We had to go full Miyabi on this one, and even with Miyabi, I had to do a lot of experimentation and wound up with Miyabi Nicole Rina foregoing the anomaly buff with that team. That you can pick, because you can pick one of the 3 buffs at the start. And actually went with the quick assist one. And this is what got it for me to get the 3-star in the end. And despite it using Rina at this point is workable built. Nicole was still pretty behind, but my Miyabi is really well built right now. I've invested a lot into her. And it still took multiple attempts to get this 3-star, because you just got to learn that fight. And the cadence of points you'll get is determined by his stun windows as well, and how well you can utilize them. And get that disorder proc in at the right time, because you get those free attacks from your chain attacks. So you probably proc a disorder then to make sure you maximize it, making sure all the proper debuffs are on him for maximum judgment nutting. Knowing when to free ult in that fight when you're not.
So does he? If you remove his buff, does he get stunned? Because you didn't put a stunner on that team.
No, he doesn't. You're gonna get 1 to 2 stuns without a stunner on that team.
Okay.
And
'Cause I don't think I've ever gotten a stun with Miyabi as my lead.
no,
Nobody's ever lasted long enough.
no, he has a functionally infinite health pool because he's a deadly assault boss. But you've uh, you've got to really line stuff up so that things trigger well to get the full stars on that team. If you wanted the easiest team to do it, I mean, Miyabi and Nagi would make this boss a joke, but I don't have Yanagi. So I cannot keep the disorder trigger permanent. I have to, and I was using two off element characters, and I think Shakabu or
I was
Etherbu.
planning. I was planning to basically forego any benefits from Bang Boost because I don't have a suitable one, and just leading with Miyabi and putting both Astra and Nicole on that team,
Yeah,
which is a pretty standard ethereal farming team for me.
that'll work just fine for this boss.
Because normally I go for a 3-2-1 star clear in ascending order of difficulty. I'm not really that concerned about getting the last 3 prestige stars because I just don't have the tools to play around with to rearrange teams to fit. So I would probably just take an orthodox and be Grace Rena for the construction robot, and then a standard Sons of Caledon team to Pompey.
Yeah, that'll probably get you there. Um, I was very tempted just to move Bernice onto the Dead End Butcher team, but I knew that Bernice would make Pompey free because he's weak to fire, and you just need to trigger anomalies. And while she may not be the Disorder Queen, she is certainly the Anomaly Queen. But if you just need random passive anomalies to trigger all the time to reset buffs,
I mean,
Bernice is your girl.
if you want lots of anomalies, Bernice is good for that. But I actually find Grace is faster at getting an anomaly when you really getting a disorder when you really need one, compared to Bernice, who's pretty hopeless at it.
I got very close with Miyabi Grace Rena on Butcher. It was a very close fit, but my Grace just has fallen behind in her gear and her skill levels compared to the rest of my roster, and she couldn't quite cut it. But she got real close.
If you don't have Yanagi and you need to supply another anomaly, Grace is probably the fastest one that can go from 0 to shock from a standing start amongst the anomaly characters.
Yeah. She is a viable partner for just getting disorder triggers if that's what you need. And she was an option. But proper judgment net planning and running Rena with Nicole to try and synergize the disorder procs worked out pretty good. And once the first disorder pops, as long as if you're using the quick assist strategy like I was with that team, you will have enough built up to be able to force a pop when you need it. After the first one, the real trick with Butcher using Miyabi and if you take the anomaly buff, you're going to run into the problem where you freeze him too much. The first one's always slow to get off.
Just that you need.
Yeah. So the first one always takes a bit to get off, your first judgment nut. But after that, they start rolling in faster and faster as other characters get their anomalies on the boss. And you get your buffs rolling, and you get your attack cadences going, and you're hot swapping more to go directly into Miyabi's ice moves. Then the anomalies just build up too fast if you take the anomaly buff, is what I found. And you will just keep the boss frozen or shocked. And he doesn't attack when he's frozen or shocked. But yeah, he's going to be one that's going to be hit or miss with people. It depends entirely on how much you enjoy a learning process with a boss and seeing something that looks insurmountable in front of you, and then just keep practicing at it until you start getting whatever your goal is for the fight for your account level. But if you enjoy that kind of thing like I do, they knocked it out of the park with this boss. I'm kind of glad since they decided to drop this boss in here as a new boss, that they just made the other two kind of just do the fight normally, because you're going to spend so much time learning this other boss, you don't have time to f around with wacky mechanics.
Honestly, I prefer it that way. Like that model combined with the putting the premium rewards on the first 6 stars and just prestige rewards on the latter 3 stars, I think is the better model, because I want to play and enjoy the game as a person who is not native to the genre. I don't want to get left in the dust because my earnings continually fall behind those who are good at it to the point where I just can't keep up. Because that gap will only get wider and wider if you play on it. Like the difference is not great, but it does stack up. Like the only people who say, "Oh, missing the last 3 stars on Apocalyptic Shadow doesn't matter because it's only a couple of pulls." Like you say that, but you would never give up a couple of pulls if you didn't have to, would you? You just are saying that because it's easy for you right now. When it's no longer easy for you, are you still going to be thinking that way, or are you going to be molding about it?
Yeah, it's also seeing gradual return over your investment without feeling like you're losing count progress
Yes,
as
like
you're able to do more and more
those latter
stars.
3 stars, like they'll give me some headroom to improve if I want to sit down and do it, but they won't make me feel like I'm forced to bash my head against the wall just to stay up with the curve, because that will make it no longer fun.
Yeah, like with your
As long as
roster.
I've got the option, then it's fine. If I don't have the option, then I'm not happy. I mean, that was why I was mad at Arpeggio Fold. Like, if there wasn't a unique Bangbu you can't get elsewhere, then I probably would have just dropped it like a hot rock as soon as I felt like I had enough polychrome. But that wasn't the case.
Yeah, Arpeggio Fault had other problems that made me hate it.
Well, well, yeah, but I mean, the thing that makes you hate it the most is that you can't get away.
Kidnaps you. Well, it's not even the bang boo that keeps you in there. It's you get into one level and it's just like, yeah, but I could just keep going forever.
If I just make one more loop around this room, the number will get higher.
It's so frustrating. Anyway, this Deadly Assault I feel is really good. I think 2 stars on the Butcher fight is doable with Miyabi on your account if you practice at it. 3 stars might be out of reach. Maybe with Astra and
Whether or not I
Nicole.
can get to 2 stars depends on how many gachas I'm trying to play.
Yeah,
This is the operative question because remember I play 5 gachas.
yeah, and learning him enough to get that many stars may be a big ask. Just getting one good run where you get 1 to 2 stars and call it a day on him is definitely doable. Anything more is going to need a lot of practice. But yeah, I enjoyed this Deadly Assault cycle for the most part, specifically the new Butcher fight, and the new event is huge. Oh boy, we thought
Huge.
Nick, yeah, we thought Bang Boo Fall Guides in Final Fantasy 14 was a laggy mess. Wait till you see Bang Boo Fall Guys. Thankfully,
Listen. I'm playing on a server 300 milliseconds away from me. It's going to be a lot worse for me than it was for you.
remember Last Lantern Right with the mini games though, where that was actually an advantage.
It was to a certain extent.
It is so when you know how Eos can do the little dive when you jump in the air?
Yes.
You hit other Bang Boos while you're diving, you knock them around. And so you will just get phantom Bang Boo dives hit you when nobody is anywhere near you. I have no idea how their netcode is set up to handle this, and it makes me wonder. Maybe this is why they're delaying putting multiplayer in the game so
But you
much.
see, the thing is that it works fine for conventional Genshin play. Like, I don't know how they've done it, but they've done all of the buffering such that even though I know that there's lag in there and I can see it if I look for it, it still feels seamless when you play multiplayer in combat arenas and that sort of thing in Genshin.
Yeah,
It's just that whenever they try and do anything creative, it's like, oh, well, we've got to do something special here. Let's just forget about netcode. We don't need netcode. Netcode is for chumps.
yeah.
I'm
The
sure they can figure out something like old school melty blood if they need to.
B caster get more from a networking degree, or you get more from learning how to set up MB caster towards becoming a networking specialist than trying to actually go to school for it. So yeah, that is the gotcha stuff. On the VR front, this continues. Um, last week I started a replay of Half-Life Alex because it's been about 3 to 4 years since I played it. This game, it made me realize something about VR games. that I knew in my head but hadn't put into language yet. And that when you are designing a VR game, if you want to have a shot at being a genuinely great video game and a masterpiece of the VR genre, you need to ask yourself a question before you even start developing VR. Well, you need to ask yourself two questions. Number one, the first question is, without VR, would this game still function as a video game and be relatively fun? Like, would this be playable and would people pay for it without VR? The next question you need to ask is, okay, now that I've decided to make a VR video game, what elements of VR can I pick and choose to use that are immersive and fun that add to the gameplay and the experience rather than just being a gimmick? And in every single instance of this, Half-Life Alyx picked the right answer. Everything from the way weight operates when you pick things up, where if it's small enough, it functionally doesn't have weight, to the way her hands can grasp stuff, to the way you reload your guns, and how forgiving it is for collecting stuff, the way it allows you to use the gravity gloves to avoid having to bend up and down all the time. Like, all of these are just the correct decision at every single instance. Setting the world up with just enough sandboxy fun stuff you can goof around with without distracting you from the focused gameplay experience for too long. All of that strikes just a perfect balance. It really is a masterpiece of a game. And
Well, see, the thing about all that is that Half-Life Alyx is 5 years old, and nobody since has managed to get anywhere near close to it.
No, we're if Half-Life Alyx is still the best at a 10 out of 10, the closest we've come is Arkham Shadow at a 8.5 to 9 out of 10.
But Half-Life Alyx is half a decade old. That means that there's been half a decade for people to get caught up on what they were doing and how they were doing it, and to learn the lessons they need to learn.
Yeah, and
So the question you have to ask is, why hasn't that happened?
well, there's a couple reasons for that. The first is VR went into a stagnant phase for a solid 2 years where it just didn't move at all. I don't know why this happened, but from 2022 and 2023, there was basically no VR dev happening or no releases happening at the very least of substantive note. Everything was either a long dev cycle project like Arkham Shadow, or it was a mod. There were a few small releases in that time. I think like Arizona Sunshine 2 came out in that time. Okay. But it's like 2 of those years just didn't exist. And I think a lot of people, I'm wondering how much of it is people did see what Half-Life Alyx can do and had to go back to the drawing board, because we're starting to see a lot of games take inspiration from that and learn some of those lessons now, with Into the Radius being another one I'm really enjoying that's pretty close. It focuses more on the survival and realistic elements, but still seems to make most of the right choices. And Arkham Shadow, that finally nailed down physical hand-to-hand combat in a fun and visceral way, while still feeling very comic book. Like, a lot of this stuff seems like people had to do some reevaluating in that time frame, and we're just now seeing some stuff come out of that. But I really want to see more focused gameplay experiences that generate these fun environments to take part in and these fun things to do that are good games in their own right, rather than just toys or sandboxes to play multiplayer in. Because there's a lot of those already. We don't need any more of those. But what I want for VR to really do, if the medium is going to continue to exist, and the future of VR is not certain at all. It could just totally flop and be discontinued if the market won't grab it because there's no good games for it, or it could be put on the back burner yet again, for all we know. But there is potential there, and Arkham Shadow and Alyx really show that what you can do with it if you have a good dev team dedicated to making a good video game. It's just I wonder how much of it also is just a product of the modern game development, especially in the West environment, because the West is where most VR development is happening. And that they just don't, they're not very good at innovation or good ideas. they're good at repeating things and releasing sequels and remakes, and they're good at they're good at just crapping out these uh these live service products. But to make something fun and interesting in a new medium that adds a whole multiple new layers to interact with the world takes genuine creative talent. Coming up with the ways that the gravity gloves work in Half-Life Alex, or the way the guns work in that game, or stuff like that, took talent. Figuring out how to make combat work in Arkham Shadow and make it fun and make all the gadgets usable, and making all of them fun to use in Batman took genuine talent and creativity. But that is something I think the Western gaming industry writ large just lacks. That is a rare thing, and it's why so few games have come out that have really been able to capture VR and utilize it. And VR is cost prohibitive in its development, so you cannot get indie VR developers. You may have smaller VR development houses that set themselves up specifically for VR, but their stuff takes forever to churn out because VR takes a lot of time. That extra layer of depth to everything, you can't just make a 2D game and then slap a pair of VR goggles on and call it done. If you want to genuinely take advantage of it, I mean, you can't pull a Todd Howard here. You can try, but you get Skyrim VR, which I've heard the modding community has actually even fixed that. But I'm dubious of this claim and not going to spend $60 to go rebuy Skyrim again just to see if the mod makes it as good as people say it does.
You have to buy it again?
Yes, Todd put it out as a separate product.
Todd. Why are you like this, Todd?
But and every time I boot up VR, it's I just see potential here, untapped potential for creative minds I know that exist out there in the gaming sphere that once upon a time can make good games. I know people can do it because they did it all throughout my childhood as 3D games were becoming. We were transitioning from 2D to 3D. Got to see that in real time. Back when I was really paying attention to games then. Like, I know this stuff can be done by human beings. It's just the will and the environment has to be there. And the right minds at the right place with the right level of interest. And this idea of perpetual growth cannot be a factor in this because it probably is not going to make you more money than your re-release of whatever sequel it was last year. But it will be an investment in the future.
If you're trying to do that, when will you find time to work out all of the details of your live service monetization and your diversity quotas?
Yeah, that like all that crap has to go, and you have to let genuine creative freedom reign, and just try stuff. Like, I remember when in the transition from 2D to 3D, people figured out the collectathons for fun, and watching all of them. Some of them were rogue copies, that happened all the time. Some of them were cheap knockoffs or cash grabs, but a bunch of them you could see, like from Spyro to Banjo and all the other rare games to Mario, how they all looked at each other's games and were like, "Oh, that was a good idea. Okay, how can we do that better? What if we did this while taking this idea from this other game?" You can see that all between all those old games in that genre that were really popular when I was a kid. So I know people are capable of this. Just I get out of the current industry headspace you're in. And it genuinely is ridiculously impressive what Valve was able to put out for Half-Life Alyx for 2020. Like, it is.
And then never again. Valve has done nothing. Nobody else has done anything.
Yeah, it's
I mean, that's more depressing to me than anything else. It's like, well, if we go back in time half a decade, then we can get a game that's good. So
yeah, we've got one game that can compete with Alyx on that level so far that I've played. There could be some hidden gems out there. VR does not get as much discussion as other mediums when it comes to video games, and finding hidden gems is a real thing you can do if you just go fishing. I found Into the Radius that way.
well, the thing is, most people aren't going to want to bother until, as a medium, it is mature enough that they know that they're going to have a good baseline experience and not have to depend on finding exceptional things buried in the muck, because most of them are muck. If you've played one VR sandbox, you played them all.
Yeah, it's It's unfortunate, but I do think the right now, if they can poop out just a few more games of Alex or Arkham Shadow tier, I think it'll be okay to generally recommend VR. But we need like at least 2 or 3 more games that quality.
I mean, barring your positive reviews of the new Arkham game, like every time anybody asks for a suggestion of what VR games there are to play that are worth playing, like you're only going to get like
Beat Saber and
Alex will be
Alex.
suggested to you, and Beat Saber will be suggested to you if you are a streamer.
Yeah, like it's play Beat Saber and play Alex if you have a PC. That's gonna be it. But
Yeah,
and
there's nothing else. Nobody else is going to be offering up anything. Like there presumably, I think I saw for a bit there was a certain amount of interest in one of the Resident Evil games,
yeah,
but it it didn't seem to stick very long, and I think that's because it was in a tough position where the implementation was mediocre, but it was still just a bit much for most people to handle in VR
yeah,
because it's a rather oppressive environment, being in a survival horror game in first person.
yeah. That is definitely a niche you can tap into for a select group of people. But the general audience, I think, basically any girls are going to not buy that game. Well, they might buy that game actually. They may be your primary
And
demographic for all I know.
there were a non-trivial number of people were genuinely traumatized by Alien Isolation in VR.
Yeah, it's hard. VR has another hurdle, and that it's hard to describe with words the elements that are value adds by adding depth to a video game, and even further hard to describe how fun it is to pick stuff up with your hands and aim your guns with your hands. Simple things like in Alex, for example, you upgrade your guns with collectible little circular resin discs from the Combine that you find. You stick them in your backpack and you accrue them as a currency you can spend at weapon upgrade stations that you buy and use. And you just drop your weapon into it and pick the upgrade you want, and they all cost different amounts of resin. And we'll take the basic pistol, for example. It has a relatively cheap reflex sight. Now, in a first person shooter game, like Alex would have been if it wasn't in VR, this would be a okay upgrade. Like, the bullet's still going to go on the center speaking, but it's not going to be the biggest ad in the world. The next one is going to be one that doubles the magazine capacity of the pistol. Well, it's not quite that. It allows you to load a magazine into the gun, eject the magazine after it's pulled all the bullets out of it, and add those bullets to a reservoir, and then put another magazine in, a fresh magazine in. So you don't have to worry about wasting ammo by ejecting a magazine early.
But what about full mag ejected?
You can full mag ejected, but thankfully you can put it right back in there. What you don't want to do is accidentally fire one shot and eject the mag, because then you can't put it back in your backpack. Then it has to go back in the gun. Otherwise, you're stuck carrying it in the bucket. Or grabbing a bucket and using it to carry it around. But the other upgrade is a burst fire mode. This in an FPS, this would be a huge upgrade for the pistol. This is the second cheapest upgrade. The most expensive upgrade on the pistol in VR is the laser sight, because this allows hip firing accuracy in VR. Like, the laser sight in an FPS is the cheapest upgrade for most guns. It is the
Because it's
most
functionally useless.
yeah, it is the most expensive and most useful upgrade in VR. Because being able to accurately land your shots from far away much faster than you could without it is huge, especially in a game where finding ammo laying around and ammo conservation is part of the game. Like, things like that in VR don't translate into discussion well, because you cannot make somebody understand how valuable a laser sight is until they have to actually aim a gun with their hands and don't have it, and then put one in their hands with a laser sight and go, oh wow, this is way easier. Things like picking up junk in the world and throwing it to distract the combine, or pop a grenade and throw it out. Things like grappling from point to point to deliberately confuse the enemies while personally pulling off out your batarang and whacking it on the wall to make the guards go to a different location. So you can go pick off one of them from the top of another gargoyle that you're sitting on, and manually having to do the motions to push Batman off of the gargoyle and go down and grab the guy and manually rip your arms back to pull him up and then punch him in the head to knock him out and kick him off the edge. Like this stuff is not stuff that you can convey to somebody who through words, because this is visceral feelings and reactions to the actual motions you take while you're playing the game that make it fun. And in addition to it being hard to describe, most gamers are fat slobs that haven't moved a day in their life, and most of them can't even stand up for an hour. But it's just there's this element of fun and engagement with the world. There is a there was a bug in Half-Life Alyx for one ragdoll item that they undid because the players rioted on it, actually, because they just like goofing around with it in VR. There's a dead rat in a trash can near the start of the game. And the ragdoll physics are broken on this rat. And you can grab it with both hands, and it will stay magnetized to your hands. But the rat has no break property. You can't break the rat. It has no value where you can set it to a broken state. So if you pull your hands apart while holding it with two hands with the rat, you have spaghetti rat that is wiggling and flopping all over the place and spazzing out. And because this stupid rat was so fun to mess around with in VR, just because it was the one broken item in the game, the community rioted when they fixed it and they undid the fix. Because it was only ever supposed to be meant to be grabbed with one hand. I think there's somebody on YouTube that did a rat percent playthrough and found a way to take it through the entire game. You can't do anything. It's just a dead rat. It's a nasty rat, too. Like, the thing is dead, and it's a rat. But you take your buddy through the whole game if you want. Yeah, and the other game that I've really enjoyed, that I don't put on the same level as Arkham Shadow or Half-Life Alyx, but is getting there, is Into the Radius, which is a simple mission-based pseudo-survival game with highly tweakable difficulty, but still a structured gameplay experience where you are assigned missions, go out into the radius, which is a fixed map, not procedurally generated, that you explore and have to accomplish various objectives in. And as you complete more missions, you get more money and get you promoted and can unlock more stuff for your weapons. And it focuses on just the simulating the aspect of the environment you're in, as far as the gunplay goes, as close as possible in VR. Things like your gun jamming and having to get in there and rack the slide and sometimes pull the bullet out if it's really stuck in there. And all this sounds like it's not very fun, but it's stuff that adds to a VR experience because of the slow pace of the combat and methodically planning stuff out. You can turn on magazine, gun, and all kinds of other stuff, degradation, and have to actually take your gun after you go out on an adventure and shoot a bunch of stuff to a cleaning station and a repair station and manually scrub that thing out with cleaning grease and a toothbrush and keep your magazines and your gun in order. All that's optional though, and you can tune it as much as you want. And I think that goes a lot of the way to making it fun. And the gunplay in general in that game, even though it's slow paced, just feels really good because of the sheer amount of sandboxy options you have. That's one that sticks while still being fairly sandboxy. But it doesn't give up the focused gameplay aspect because there are still missions to go out, kill stuff, find stuff, bring it back, and do enough missions to unlock the story progression mission. The first one's a little short. What's that?
Well, I'm trying to remember. Was that that Alan Wake tie-in? Was that a VR game?
Do not remember.
was it? What was it? Control.
Oh, don't think so. That's a third-person action game.
Okay, because it looked sort of like a lot like a lot of the VR games that were coming out in that era in terms of the way it was designed.
Yeah, it's that's the one that couldn't run it full FPS on
Yeah,
the
it's probably
PS4.
probably no hardware could actually run it in VR even if they wanted to.
Yeah, the most effective strategy in that game is throw rock. Um,
But
you
that's
get
a pretty standard VR strategy.
but with telekinesis, and the problem is you make the rocks from the environment, and the environment is fully destructible, and the game has to render all these fully destructible items. And then after you destruct one of them, it explodes into a shower of a gorillion particles that would hard crash the PS4 if you broke too many too quick.
It sounds pretty VR to me.
Yeah, that is the other issue with VR is until recently, the technical demands for VR were quite high. 2025, they're not as bad as they were in 2020. Games have also not progressed very much from 2020. In general, not just in VR. We've not seen, unless you're talking about lighting and stuff, which I'm not even convinced actually does anything. Um, very much increased demand in VR or in gaming in general, and this by proxy has made VR slightly more accessible. And the release of the Quest 3 in particular, being a very good, relatively cheap headset, has also made it more accessible.
The word relatively is doing a lot of freaking heavy lifting there.
Yeah, because you're still looking at $500 at minimum without having to buy a new graphics card. If you have to buy a
500
new graph,
Amira bucks. You're still one of the wealthiest countries in the world.
yeah, like you're looking at 300 for the headset, and you're gonna have to replace the strap. That's another $50. And any other peripherals you want for it, we'll say budget 50 more for that, and then yeah, it just plus the video games. That's another 50 to 100 right there, and that's if you don't get the one that has the expanded storage. So it's still a cost investment, and unfortunately, right now, or rather, fortunately for VR, I think they are in a position to see a boom in the VR market. With the decline of general gaming right now, people looking for new, fresh experiences, and the economy hopefully getting itself out of its Biden era funk. I
Well, the
think we,
economy, yes. The tariffs on China, not so much. Like there's going to be a price to pay for that.
yeah, I
You
know,
haven't onshored all of your electronics development, and you're not going to be able to buy them cheaply from China. So there's a road ahead of the US economy to recover. It's not going to magically get better because Trump took over and stopped doing the insane Biden crap.
yeah, I know, but it's still there that we can and that I think the environment can set itself up to really allow VR to shine and do well in because
Well, my concern is the development environment, like because basically you're going to end up sort of stuck in this bizarre position where all of the dev kits that you currently have available are all of the dev kits available in the country, sort of thing, because of the tariff situation. Because if you need to fill up a development house with gear, either you've got to find a hardware manufacturer to sponsor you as basically a method of promoting the hardware, which is what internally first is done with first party console software, or you need to be able to buy a whole truckload of cheap electronic goods in order to do your development, and that sort of stuff, usually sourced out of Chinese factories, suddenly no longer an option. Like the amount of contraction that will be required before a normalization of Western economies following a implementation of tariffs against China is it's going to have a lot of second, third, fourth, and fifth order effects that nobody's thought about yet.
yeah, the world at large, especially the U.S., become way too reliant on China for their tech stuff of any. In fact, their stuff in general. Forget the techosphere, just everything in China. We become way too reliant on it. Um,
Like
but
they have a legit commercial incentive to actually do something other than just rumble about Taiwan now, because if they can take Taiwan away, then there's basically no silicon venue for the United States, aside from stuff that they've managed to onshore already. So they really need to get their butts in gear.
Really need to get those plants up in Florida moving, and they have been subsidized by DeSantis. They are moving, but I'm dubious of government subsidy anything because it, well, we know how the government operates. Once you get government money, any idea of quality starts to slowly slip away. Well, not even slowly in some cases. But yeah, I'm mostly just I see potential, and it frustrates me that we're not there yet when we've had time. But at the same time, I'm hopeful that in the future the opportunity can present itself, short future or short to mid future, I should say, where people can really take advantage of it and produce some more great quality experiences. Because every one of the big VR experiences that I've thoroughly enjoyed has stuck with me. Like I imagine Arkham
Well, I
Shadow
mean,
will stay with me for a long time because of how much I enjoyed the game, and it's in terms of the gameplay, it's just a very okay functional Arkham game. The VR value add is so high that it's a very memorable experience.
well, we're sort of, as far as the rest of the industry goes, we're kind of approaching a slop singularity right now. Like, what triple A's are there out there that anybody is excited for? Like, can you even name one? Other
Well,
than maybe Monster Hunter World, that's about as far as I can go on that.
yeah, I certainly can't name one from.
And I'm not even excited about Monster Hunter World because there's literally no reason for me to believe I can play it.
Yeah, I pre-bought my current GPU specifically when I saw the words aiming for 30 FPS on PS5.
Like I could build an entire computer more powerful than the one I currently use for the cost of a GPU that would allow me to play Monster Hunter, and that's not going to add not adding in the fact that I would need to rebuild my entire rig to play Monster Hunter simply because the size and power consumption of new components has gotten so high. The I have my concerns about the next generation of GPUs, like the specs for the 5090 are out now, and the power consumption required to run that card is perilously close to the manufacturing spec for the wires that are used to power it. Meaning, if there's enough transient spikes in the power draw, your computer will melt itself from the inside out.
Yeah, and even then, aside from sorry, aside from like Final Fantasy 16 and Monster Hunter World, what games are even using the or could really take advantage of 50?
Well, it depends on what you consider taking advantage of it, because there's virtually no ceiling on surplus rendering. It's just why you've got things like Control, right, where they just decided that they're going to render all of these objects in the game space to ridiculous surplus, and you can do that, and you don't need to just do that with actual objects. You can do it with lighting as well. The question is any of that actually advantageous? Because there's almost no ceiling on ray tracing, and a lot of that power these days is getting devoted to synthesizing frames that don't actually exist. That's where a lot of that grunt goes. They artificially increase the frame rate by using AI to synthesize intermediate frames that don't exist. And, jury's out on whether this is even capable of making things look better. But there's essentially no top rung, sort of like unbinding your FPS cap and just letting your GPU go to town. Well, you can always do that. You can always render more frames than you can see. The question is, where is the upper threshold on what is practically useful?
Yeah,
And does anybody care? Because the sorts of people who are buying these think that they can use it. So
yeah. The enthusiasts are one thing. For the general audience that isn't a GPU enthusiast or a that needs to have the latest and greatest thing, or some visual fidelity nut that swears up and down ray tracing actually matters when I think they're crazy. Um, for most people, I don't think I think they can get away with like a 3070.
Well, the thing is that that's not true, because the reality is what that extra power ends up going to is optimization slop. The developers lose the incentive to be efficient with their design, to be judicious with the way they spend the power they've got at their disposal, because they can just say, oh, well, I mean, some amount of the market's going to have this, and they'll spend money on the powerful card. They'll find some way to justify it to themselves, and then we don't need to work to try as hard to get the maximum amount of power out of the system. I mean, if you look at what, systems like the PS2 was able to accomplish with its hardware, like they squeezed every drop that they could out of that device by the time it hit the end of its life cycle. The launch PS2 games versus the sort of the close of life cycle PS2 games is a huge gap there. A massive gulf that was filled in by cleverness, essentially, on the part of developers. But now that they've got this enormous invisible headroom to work with, there's not really as much of an incentive for them to be clever. They'll just throw power around like it doesn't matter. And that's how you get things like Monster Hunter Wilds. Like, they've got all of the scope of raw power to play with, so they can treat the end user machine like a developer machine, as though that they can just, design in as many polygons as they want, as much physics as they want. They can just be ridiculous with the amount of texture depth that they've got available, and just assume that, oh, well, if people want to play it because they're devotees of the IP, well, they'll just have to find a way to play it, won't they?
I'm very
And
frustrated.
the frustrating thing about this, other than the fact itself, is that we know that Monster Hunter devs historically have been very good at this optimization game. Like, their offerings on the portable consoles historically have been incredibly good at being efficient.
Yeah.
And now they release Wilds, which is the opposite of that.
I'm very frustrated with Capcom in particular because of their treatment of the RE engine, which, from what I understand from what's come out of the development of the RE engine, was never ever supposed to be used for anything more than small scale, single level rendered games or environments that did not have very many active moving parts in them, like in Resident Evil and Devil May Cry. That's what it was made with the focus and intent of. It was never made for things like Dragon's Dogma or Monster Hunter Wilds. I don't know if Monster Hunter Wilds is going to use free engine, but I assume it is since Capcom's everything these. And that thing just ain't built for large scale multiplayer experiences. I'm really worried about Wilds and how well it'll perform. Not perform sales wise. I mean, perform.
Yes, it's built on the RE engine.
Yeah, that engine is just not built for that crap. Like, it's caused all kinds of issues anytime they moved it outside its scope. Like, that thing is built for a purpose as a tool. It was never meant for a general purpose use. But they have seen the games that did well right after they released the RE engine. We're like, oh, we'll just use it for everything. No, it's an in-house engine. I know you're real proud of it. Don't got to pay a licensing fee or anything for it, but good gravy, people. Don't try to. You don't try to use a drill on a nail. Sometimes you just need a hammer. So yeah, that's my VR rant done. Just enjoying my time revisiting it, and it will probably be that go back to this thing that I check out for about 3 to 4 months at a time, maybe use it to actually lose weight as if I make it active in that, which I have been lately. I've been deliberately not playing any games in sit down mode and trying to stand up to be more active. And just keep checking in on it every once in a while and see where we're at. Because there's potential here. It's just I know if the environment can adapt in time to allow for it to really grow into a medium that can flourish with good games. It's cost prohibitive stuff on top of everything else notwithstanding. But we'll have to see. VR development's always interests me ever since I fell in love with it the first time I used it. And going back into it has been a very fun experience. So yeah. That is where we're at with the VR stuff. And I think that's all I got for my week is a bit of VR stuff, and I already mentioned all the Hoyo stuff. So, I threw a couple announcements in show host, but no relevant. We can go over them if you want.
I'm not really a Ninja Gaiden person.
I only put this one in here because it's the first Ninja Gaiden game in 13 years for a mainline entry after the disaster that.
I've played like one of them on like one of the Xboxes, I think.
Yeah,
like
probably
Xbox or something.
Probably the first one. The first one got a lot of mileage. But yeah, I enjoyed the first Ninja Gaiden at the time until I discovered Devil May Cry. Off the races, and I never looked back. But I do still have fond memories of Ninja Gaiden. Ninja Gaiden 3, when I went back and replayed the franchise, was a total disaster. And if there's one thing that the Ninja Gaiden team is usually okay with, it's their ladies don't have pudge face. Well, they might have pudge face, but they at least make up for it with other aspects. Rachel could get close sometimes, depending on how she was rendered. So yeah, I didn't see an article on Niche Gamer about how, for some reason, on the Xbox trailer for Ninja Gaiden 4, they just removed all the ladies. Like even in
right,
even in reflections of lenses and stuff that would show the female characters, they just cut them all out for the Xbox trailer. But yeah, Team Ninja is a clown show to me after Dino May Cry, but I'll keep an eye on their stuff because sometimes they can put out a new product as long as the meme isn't tied to it. But we'll see. I am interested in a new Ninja Gaiden. It has been long enough that I could poke at it again. So I may put it on the watch list. Not quite on the full radar anticipatory yet, but I'll keep an eye on it. Have to see some actual gameplay first. Next announcement is the new season of Grand Blue Fantasy Versus will be hitting up next month. We got a release date for the new character battle pass and the new season starting, and when I plan to jump back into the game a little bit, and that is February 26th. So I'm looking forward to that. I've enjoyed every minute I've spent with Grand Blue Fantasy Versus, aside from the era of OP Beatrix. But yeah,
I feel like Sindalfon's going to be ridiculously OP though.
Well, he's
like, I don't think that's possible for it not to be.
Yeah, if he's not at least top tier, the Grand Blue fans will riot. But they have been pretty quick to address overpowered characters or elements that are broken, aside from Nier. Nier stuck around as a broken puppet character for a while because they took
puppet
so
characters
long.
Always do.
But she eventually got bopped with the Nerf bat and is still top tier, but not everybody and their mom can't pick her up and do the full 75% health combo from no meter. So yeah, that's coming. I'm looking forward to more time with that game. I get to buzzsaw on people more, be forever pure and forever racist, and also get to throw sheep at people. I do love throwing sheep at people. I need to download the mod that gives them the Terry Bogard hat.
I see.
So that's coming. So expect more updates from that when we get to it. And the expected Dragon Age the Veilguard underperformed according to EA.
To be fair, though, when it comes to how much games cost to make today, every game underperforms. Even games that aren't even anywhere near as egregious as the new Dragon Age was, every game underperforms because the expectations are too high.
Yeah, so the game has the lowest player base of all three games, or all the previous games in total, and was at least 50% under expectations. 50
I have
is quite big.
I have a suspicion that this is sort of part of what's behind the sort of the live service cancer that we get this much these days, is that being able to pay your investors in promises of future money is the only way that you can actually mollify them to pay for development of a game these days.
While the
Because the
pretty
expectations are comically high.
Yeah, while the pretty graphics and all the nice things that money are can add to the gameplay experience in general, I think just downsizing dev teams. But please crash industry. Return us back to the pre total investor dominance with multi-grillion dollars needed to flow around with every video game. Like the fact that we're approaching billions with a B tier video games in some cases. Like that's just ludicrous to me for how much cost they're sinking in. You don't need all that. If you're getting to that level, you better give me the world. But it doesn't ever seem you seem to hit a diminishing returns rather quickly in your investment is what I'm trying to get at. When it comes to single player experiences in particular. Please downscale it. You don't need 400 person teams. You know, the most you need is like 60 for a AAA. Just make a focused, good experience without breaking the bank, and make some money. Be good for you. You have a good time. All of us be happy, and keep the DEI hires out because they're also a sunk cost. And get out of California. We could all be happy here, video game developers. All you got to do is just not be dumb. But yeah, the 50% number just was like, well, at least they were under 50% of their expectations. But the other thing is, I don't think EA cares because they have FIFA money.
Yeah, well, I mean, they decided to sting Hoyo with a fine for deceptive marketing and gambling and so on and so forth for loot boxes that Genshin allegedly has. But FIFA Ultimate Team? Nah, fine.
Can't ding the sports games. So yeah, I think that's all I really pulled from the news headlines. Just a couple upcoming games that caught my eye, or one upcoming game, one upcoming new season for a game, and just getting one last laugh at the card before.
I'm still desperately drowning in Hoyo games, so I haven't really paid a great deal of attention to other games. I mean, they keep providing me with content, and other game developers keep providing me with disappointment. So I'm just not that concerned. I don't see on a regular basis any, like, if I look at the sort of announcements which scroll by on a regular basis, the only ones that like stick out as actually announcing games of interest is like, oh well, there's another trailer posted or whatever, and everything else is pretty much just either like phoned in indie tat, or which just accounts for a huge amount of the market now, or just the latest iteration of some like umpteenth time reheated IP, which is now unrecognizable and will require 1.5 terabytes of hard drive space or whatever.
Yeah. Speaking of indie slop, though, I do not remember what date it's coming out, but Crowsworn has a demo up now. It is basically what happens when somebody gets inspired by Hollow Knight with a even smaller dev team than Team Cherry, believe it or not, and makes a game that is a spiritual successor or in the same vein as Hollow Knight, but
And comes out before Silk Song.
still comes out before Silksong. And the game has looked very good every time I've seen it pop up, even though it's yet another indie 2D Metroidvania. But I'm looking forward to checking it out because it does look like it's really well put together. So demo's up now if you want to go check that one. From what I heard, I don't know if the demo is on the site, but I saw an article. So hopefully that is launching soon. That'll eat a week for me. Hopefully. But yeah, that's all I got for outside of huge news. I really do wish we still had Final Fantasy as a runner MMO to project with. I'm using the Hoyo
Yeah.
games as a filler for that, but gotcha games are not my natural perma homes. I don't feel comfortable residing in them full time.
Well, I don't feel like we got a lot of choice.
Just
I mean,
aren't.
I haven't heard anything coming out of the whatchamacallit, the development of Final Fantasy 14 that makes me think anything's going to change anytime soon. And
Yoshi P's public statements have not been encouraging at all.
yeah, but there's always that hope/cope in the air though, that we don't know if he would say anything. If he had strong feelings about it, would he say anything? Or would it be verboten for him to say anything publicly and he has got to keep it all on the down low?
Yeah. I have this fantasy in my head that is not true at all, of him just coming in with a bunch of spears and demanding they be filled with heads before he shows back up again after lunch. But oh, I don't think anything close to that happened. Yeah. So I'll keep an eye on Final Fantasy 14 and stick my nose in during the release of their new exploratory zone for a good bit. I'll give it a fair shot. I have to chew through 2 patches of Wu Clamot before I can even get to it, though. And
I think that the next whatchamacallit, the letter from the producer next one will be on the 7th.
February, yeah.
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 So I guess we'll see whether they will announce anything that inspires rather than depresses.
Their heads out of their butt. Because they've got a lot of. The game now has 2 axes that it's teetering on. One is the general gameplay with the homogenization of classes and no place to play them in. And the other is the story. And you've got to at least rectify one of those to start poking at it. And I need to see some serious progress in this Baja zone. It needs to be as good as Baja or better. And your new deep dungeon that you come out with probably also has because a lot of deep dungeon and learning the process of learning deep dungeon. Even though I always fall back on machine, really ready to go for the clear. A lot of the learning process before was figuring out the enemies through the different advantages that other classes have against every different type. That has never been less possible than the current era of Final Fantasy because the classes are so homogenized. So I am dubious I will be able to enjoy the current as much because unless your name is Pictomancer, every single caster except Red Mage, you can't Vercure at that level, so that option's out. It's a little bit more mobile, and Pictomancer is just going to dominate the damage output. Has plenty of free cast spells. For range DPS, it's going to be much the same, and that Machinist is the king of kiting, but all of them can do about the same. The only thing you got to worry about is Dancer will sometimes accidentally aggro other junk with its dance. Tanks are literally all exactly the same, with almost no deviation.
Yeah, but the thing is that particularly is sort of like, for me, that's the having played a tank since 2.0, that's the tip of the iceberg that causes me to lose faith in the entire structure. Like we could speculate till the cows come home about how the new deep dungeon will be structured and how they will design mechanics to interact with various capabilities of classes and roles and so on and so forth. But I've lost so much faith in the development team over the course of this expansion that everything is up for grabs. Like I don't feel like I can have any confidence that they won't just utterly clown the entire thing.
Yeah. Like, the game has too many classes. If you try to make them all viable, the identity of each class is what you're going to have to sacrifice, and they've gone that route. They have totally sacrificed the identity in most of the melee classes. Dragoon doesn't even have a class mechanic anymore.
I feel like they're just designing it like a gacha game at this point. Like Viper still has an identity, and Pictomancer has an identity. Like there's no classes play like those guys.
Yeah, but even then, it's
But
not.
that's what you do in a gacha game. Like to just always be trying to promote the new hotness because it's a zero sum and people in order to keep playing the game, people need to be excited by the latest thing. They aren't allowed to have loyalty to the older thing. Like that sort of logic is the opposite of what you're supposed to be dealing with in an MMO.
Yeah, they've got to do some serious course correction. I don't know if they can pull it off. I'm willing to give them one more shot because I did enjoy what before, but if I see no visible improvement, I'm gonna lose the house.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't think that I'm ready to give them one more shot until that one more shot is a fresh start. Because if I come back at a patch during this expansion and it disappoints me, which I feel in my gut like it's always going to at this point, there's still going to always be that cope that, oh, well, maybe they put off all of the improvements that we need till the next expansion because the project is too large to interrupt the current development cycle. And that as long as that cope is hanging in the air, I can't come to a resolution on it.
Yeah, I think they really need to eat the fruits of their current complacency with game design, and they're catering to the whims of a very small minority. Like, I got I got news for you. Most people don't give a rat's anus. 99.9 repeating percent of your player base does not give a rat's anus if every single class can as competitive brothers in ultimates. In fact, most people don't even care if some classes just can't go to the current ultimate.
Well, I mean, currently that's the norm because that's the psychology there. So why try?
Yeah. But you're trying to cater to this imaginary idea that you can make every class as balanced as possible, and this just leads to more and more homogenization. It's a terrible, terrible idea, and you cocked it up so bad with the encounter design with the last ultimate. You had to fundamentally change the way the limit bar works to stop people from taking 4 Pictomancers.
Yeah, they're chasing an ideal that seems to have gotten locked in their collective minds that there's no reason to believe that it's necessarily beneficial or necessarily achievable, but they seem to think it's both of those things. And I think that they should just go back to basics. And we went through this, right? With bring the player, not the class.
Mm-hmm.
That this cycle has played out before, and it was a catastrophe.
Yeah, and what you need to do is just accept that during some cycles, for some bosses, some classes are not going to be optimal. The highest bar I think is realistic to set. Every class can clear Savage, not do well, not perform as good as its contemporaries, but get the clear.
Number one pass, number one pass for their role, obviously.
Yeah.
No, we don't need that crap. If you look at what people look back on fondly in say World of Warcraft, it's like the sort of the kludge and chaos of vanilla, the sort of like the sort of coalescence of what it means to do strategy in Burning Crusade, the absolutely autismal minutia which people focused on for optimization in Mists of Pandaria, like these things where the game state was constantly in flux because nothing was balanced and nobody knew what things were supposed to be like, was where people were the happiest, generally speaking. As soon as you assert this idea of balance across everything, not only have you set out to do something that's not achievable, not only have you set out to do something that's not beneficial, you've set player expectations and made them unhappy by merit of the fact that you didn't deliver what you said you would.
And never mind, the goal itself is fundamentally unachievable unless you literally just change every class just exactly the same. And even then, I'm sure somebody will complain that they lost half a second on a GCD one time because one spell effect played too hard and you need to nerf that spell effect.
Listen. I played a Dragoon for years. That's a real thing, man.
Like, it is totally and completely an impossible ideal to live up to. If you want to stick out in the minds of the majority of your player base and have the most fun with your game, let classes have their time in the limelight, and then if they get out of hand, off the other classes and take a bat to the kneecaps of the one that's outperforming.
And the
That's
thing is, I don't really feel like there's been a problem in the past because classes have never been quote balanced unquote for Deep Dungeon, right? Like how many
no,
people take their astrology in there? Does anybody actually care though?
no. There are like 3 people in the world that have deep dungeon clears on Astro for all the deep dungeons.
And nobody else cares, and everybody, there are no exceptions, everybody is playing a video game there where they have access to all the classes on a single character. There's no sunk cost that prevents you from playing another class. If you want to play it, you can play it. End of story. End of story. There's no reason why you're locked out of doing something. If you don't find a class fun and it happens to be good, well, find another one that you like to play that is also good. Like, you don't have to use the same thing in every place at all times. And if you do, well, there's consequences for doing the wrong job with the wrong tool. End of story.
There's also memorable experiences for doing so, though. Like,
Yeah, I mean, people like to make clown-ass choices to try and do things. Like, this is a standard pastime for gamers to set themselves some arbitrarily stupid challenge and attempt to overcome it.
like just the solo deep dungeon challenge in and of itself was considered a clown ass thing that nobody in their right mind should do.
We two-manned old school Polaris, just because. You're
Yeah.
not supposed to do that. Game's not built for that. Game's not balanced around that.
But that game in particular, at that time, in that early part of its life, had enough diversity in the stuff and the tools it gave us that we managed to figure out a way to do it.
I redid my build over and over and over and over to try and find a way through there.
Yeah, we were messing around with the tools we had and what skills we had equipped and what our setup was. But
And it was a game that was also uniquely good for that type of thing, which they disposed of to no avail. Like, if we didn't have a skill, we could literally go out and farm other skills, like you can in Final Fantasy, to try and change the game.
yeah,
Like they have that available there, and you can manufacture your own fun that way. If everything played exactly the same, like it does now in the current version of Secret World, where everybody's basically the same, nobody's interested anymore.
the dumb shenanigans that people get up to from doing things with a more diverse roster of classes or abilities, and the stories that allows you to tell is worth more than any perfect parsed spreadsheet you could print out. That is
Yeah,
what people
and
remember.
I think that the developer is saying, "Oh well, I have to satisfy this part of the player base," but I don't think that's strictly true. Not just in the facial sense that that's not really the case, but also I feel like the devs have trained players to think that way. They have set those expectations that it must be that way. That there's going to be everybody's going to be supposed to be on an even keel, and there should be these fine-grained differences. They are reinforcing the thing that they claim is forcing them to behave in this certain way.
Yeah. Well, if you're an MMO dev, I can see how you go down that road, and by accident, even. Like you start off making your game and making all these diverse classes with fun, unique abilities that allow players to mix and match and have fun with. And those people are happy. Those people aren't complaining that enjoy that kind of garbage and don't really care about the balance. And then you start going, oh well, I want to. Players want a bit more of a challenge. They want something with some to it. Okay, let's start developing some stuff for that. Let's make the in-game stuff a bit harder. Okay. Oh well, the players are upset that they can't bring certain classes. Okay, we'll bring a few classes. Oh, okay, we'll take a few classes now. Oh, this class not having this tool is really being a hindrance at in game, and we don't want to lock all this class out. So we'll just give them we'll just give them we'll just give it a little bit of
And
self healing.
in that vein, I have at this point completely stopped following any kind of World of Warcraft news. It's completely fallen off. But occasionally a line of patch notes will somehow cross my feed, although I don't necessarily know how. And the one that I remember most recently was essentially it said, what was it? Something like marksman hunters can now use bloodlust without a pet. And if you think about that's where you get to in the end, right?
All I idea of a unique class because the specializations are functionally, or at least at one point they were functionally, having its own identity and unique benefits. Like I remember now in Burning Crusade, it's a bit of a rocky time to really drag comparisons to because people were starting to get to a point where they could database things and really Google pretty good and figure out what was optimal, but they weren't quite there yet. It wasn't a general player based thing, and putting together raid groups at the time, especially back if you were still at Karazhan tier and stuff, working with what you had and trying to figure out how to best utilize the comp of the people you got that you were going to show up as regulars. That's a big deal. And that was a lot of fun. That's a memorable aspect of the game. And yeah, so you could not bring, the the uh the Fury Warrior sometimes, or you couldn't bring. I'm trying to think what other classes had dips in BC, but all of them at least had a heyday. It seems like.
Well, in BC, my guild had 3 Karazhan teams, and we were all in competition with each other to see who could clear it first. And we all had absolutely clown compositions. I was in Karazhan Team 3, the third stringers, and I think we might have actually won in the end, or at least we were very, very close. We got Nether Spite down before anybody else, I know that much. And we had just the most bizarre layout of suboptimal builds.
Like, okay, we can take the traditional prot warrior for this boss and have the shield wall to negate one of the mechanics, and that'll make this a bit easier. Or we go with the prot pally and it'll make the trash go a bit. Or maybe we just want the giant chunky HP bull for Nether Spite or something on our feral druid. Like this kind of decision is something you can make if you have options to the roster. If you don't, and you're stuck with who you got, it's like, okay, this class has this many tools, and these are the mechanics in the fight. Where can we slot answers to everything the fight's gonna do? And you'd have your raid leaders sitting there humming and hawing about this for a week until they come back to everybody with a clown show of a plan that eventually, with a little bit of in real time tweaking, works. This is the kind of fun stuff that diversity allows. But the second you go into that homogenization trap, all that just slowly starts to rot away. And you're left with just another bland raid tier release. Another bland catch up patch. Another rote grind. Like, you don't want to fall into that. You need to give players through gameplay the ability to make memories. And you can't do that if everybody's playing the same character in an MMO environment anymore. Just it frustrates me to no end every time I think about this particular aspect of their flop. Like the story flop, I could let go. Gameplay has become more and more important to me as I've gotten older, and instead of the opposite. But I could let the story flop go and say, okay, it sunk bad, and it hurt. But it's their gameplay decisions that are stinging even more with me. Both of them together are what's causing the issue, and making me on the edge of canceling the sub. But it just, having seen where this goes in WoW, and knowing the potential that is there if they just accept diversity of classes again. I mean, it's not going to be an easy road to get it back. Best answer would be for them to take it piecemeal and roll by roll, maybe. But it would take a fundamental change in design philosophy, and I don't know if it's there. They talk up this big class rework for 7.0 like it's something that's going to be a big paradigm shift, but you need something even bigger than a paradigm shift. You need a fundamental reorganizing of your understanding of your classes and how you want them to interface with the game.
And they have to commit to it for long enough to actually pull it off, too.
Yeah, you have to resist the whining and crying of the incredibly vocal high-end player base who, in the end of the day, I don't care how many viewers their streams get, do not matter. They will be having the few that are silent and never stream happy, or just having a few people clear will do just as much for the health and life of your game, just because they simply exist and can be talked to by a few people, so that people know that there is an upper end of players, will be just as effective, I think, as having a guerrillion, world first race streamers. I don't think that actually does very much for you. You'll get much more and more than make up any actual deficit that may come from that by just making the normal people that play your game happy. And to be clear, I'm not asking you to make the game easier. I love all the stupid, dumb, hard challenges you put in the game for solo and small group content. I love the duels in Baja. I loved being stupid and going and deciding that I was going to solo Palace of the Dead and Eureka Orthos. Like those were fun, memorable experiences, and those are okay to keep working on. But their value is reduced significantly when the gameplay is not diverse between classes, and I am just playing the same thing as everybody else. It takes the decision-making aspect and the utilization of the tools at hand part of those achievements kind of out of the equation, the more homogenized. It doesn't matter that I got the clear. It used to matter I got the clear on X. Like, in Palace of the Dead, for the longest time, I think Machinist has actually pulled ahead now in number of clears after Dodge Rail. But it used to be, like, Red Mage and Machinist. And these two classes played radically different from each other. Now everything can clear it after the Endwalker patch. After the last patch of Endwalker. And so all classes of a role, with the exception of Red Mage at that particular level, because of its unique position with its ability to heal, not being totally gimp at level 60, allowing it extra flexibility, will tell you the type of player and the strategies they used and what they're good at. It's a part of the achievement that you did it on X. Doing it on more than one class is, or multiple times in a row on the same class, shows mastery of different aspects of the game. But if every class is exactly the same, that doesn't effing matter. That aspect of the achievement is gone. You just did a hard thing. I can do hard things in lots of video games. What matters is being able to do it with some identity to it. To give some element of discussion to the particular achievement I go for. A bit of flavor to it, if you will. Even if it means it may not be as impressive as the guy that cleared it on Astro. Being part of the mech crew that cleared it on Machinist and has fallen in love with Machinist because of Deep Dungeons, that's a unique experience, and you're seeing less and less of that. Now people are saying I cleared it on range deep because everybody has all the tools they need to do the kiting that Machinist used to be able to do exclusively. So yeah, just continued gripes about Final Fantasy 14 at the end of the show. Just make sure it gets jammed in there about once a month.
Got to get once a month is generous. It's more like once a week.
Yeah, I feel like we do at least one extended gripe per month. That game has been going. But yeah, I have not given up on them, but I will give them a shot at the new uh exploratory zone and the new deep dungeon. If those flop, I will not check the new expansion unless somebody tells me it's worth it or I see some really good press about it. And I don't mean press as in Twitter. I mean press as in the people that are just as mad about Dawn Trail on the farms come back and say, actually, it's
My confidence is just really low because the noisy contingent think Bozja sucks. They think that Eureka Ortho sucks. Like they are perfectly happy with Hildebrand from whatchamacallit, Endwalker. Like they like all the things that we hate because it's convenient for them.
yeah. I hesitate to call any of the casual contingent. I know there are some that just don't want to do anything and want to get the rewards that make their numbers bigger, but or the things that makes for more glams filled out in the glamour dresser or whatever.
Well, it's the savage people that like the
Yeah,
Hildebrand. It's the
those
savage
guys.
people are the ones that hate Bozja. They hate anything that will require them to do anything other than to log on for Savage. It makes me wonder why they play the game.
The raid loggers in Final Fantasy are some of the absolute worst. They are right up there with the Crystal Data Center ERPers for the cancer of this. In fact, they might be worse because I can ignore the Crystal Data Center ERPers. I never have to go to the Crystal Data Center, and they will literally never impact my game. The Savage Raiders are a loud enough squawking majority, not majority, but squawking minority, that they are going to impact my game no matter what. So congratulations, Savage Raiders of Final Fantasy XIV. I've officially put you under Crystal Data Center ERPers. How does that make you feel? Who am I kidding? You probably have alt accounts that you log on to the Crystal Data Center with on the off days, and that's why you don't want to spend any time doing anything else. Probably why you're so mad about the stupid Blacklist plugin being able to track your alt accounts.
I'm quiet because I'm doing work.
I see. You ready to...
A customer has called and is incredibly desperate for a result, or so he claims, and there appears to be some sort of foible with it.
All right, shall we wrap then so you can get that done?
Yeah.
All right. That's where we're at. Lots of things you can potentially write about. Elio Games, where Final Fantasy XIV is going, if you're still poking at that. Any of the new releases that are slowly, and announcements that are trickling out for start of year. Anything catch your eye, you can write us about that, and we'll talk about it. All right. We'll see you next week.